Cersei Lannister stood upon the highest balcony of the Red Keep, the crisp morning air stirring her golden hair as she gazed down at the city sprawled out beneath her. The bells of King's Landing tolled, their music echoing across the rooftops, mingling with the distant cries of fishmongers and the roar of the Blackwater rush. Her green eyes narrowed in quiet calculation. The horizon beyond the city walls seemed to quiver in the wavering summer heat as if in anticipation of the events she intended to set into motion. The world was changing, she could feel it in her bones. And if she had her way, she would be at the helm of that change, steering it to benefit House Lannister. She let her gaze follow the sloping city down to the sea where ships bobbed in the bay, their sails rippling and aflutter like so many bright banners. Once, her father's presence had loomed over every strategy, every scheme, every command that bore the name Lannister. Tywin Lannister had stood behind her, guiding her as a child and then as the queen consort to King Robert Baratheon. But Tywin was growing older. The red lines beneath his eyes betrayed that his razor-sharp vigilance, while still formidable, would not last forever. She had gleaned enough from him to claim the reins for herself if she could just seize the right opportunity. And it was coming, it was coming sooner than anyone expected. She turned and walked back into her solar where a pitcher of Dornish wine rested on a polished wooden table. A small breeze followed her inside through the open window, rustling the parchment that lay waiting for her perusal. She did not sit. Instead, she poured herself a cup and took a slow, contemplative sip. The documents spread across her desk were proposals, marriage alliances, and correspondences from lords of the Reach, the Stormlands, and the Westerlands. All these papers were pieces of a puzzle, one that she intended to solve before her enemies realized what she was doing. In the corner, a shadow moved. Ser Meryn Trant, her Kingsguard shadow, stood there impassive, a silent statue in white armor. With Robert Baratheon's hold on the throne weakening with each passing year, his indulgences, his wine-sodden hunts, and his mounting debts to the Iron Bank, it was inevitable that the next generation of rulers would shape the Seven Kingdoms. But Cersei had never believed she must wait for that eventual shift. Power was something one took carefully or violently before the rightful opportunity slipped away. If she aligned with the right Baratheon, if she created a bond that would give her true influence in the Reach, her father's longtime ambition, then all the southwestern lords might follow. And that alliance would form a golden band around her future. She walked to her mirror, scrutinizing her reflection. Time had thus far been kind to her, no wrinkles at the corners of her eyes yet, her cheeks still smooth and regal. But she knew she would not always have such advantage. She pulled back her shoulders and traced the lines of her face with her fingertips, remembering the days of her youth when she was betrothed to Rhaegar Targaryen, that dream cut short by war. Then came Robert, the usurper who had destroyed the Targaryens and taken her as queen, though he had never truly loved her. He cared more for the memory of Lyanna Stark. For years, Cersei had endured, seething in that union. For years, she had felt her father's plan overshadow her life, forging a bond between Lannister and Baratheon that served House Lannister's power. Now, Robert was on his last legs as a monarch. His reign was both triumphant and disastrous, and she intended to survive its end unscathed. The door creaked open, drawing her attention away from the mirror. Peter Baelish stepped in, sliding past the King's Guard as if he owned the solar. He bowed with mocking grace. "My queen, you requested my presence?" His tone dripped with familiarity and caution. "Close the door," she commanded, not turning to face him yet. She heard the latch click. Baelish's shoes tapped lightly on the stone floor as he approached. "I understand you've been reviewing several new proposals. Word of your interest in the South has reached certain ears." "Your sources never cease to amaze me, Lord Baelish," Cersei said. "Your knowledge of the city's rumor mills and letters might prove very helpful in what I intend to do." Littlefinger's lips curved into a curious half-smile. "And what, pray tell, do you intend to do, my queen?" Cersei measured her response carefully. "I want to know where the Tyrells stand in regard to the Baratheons. Mace Tyrell will surely want to marry his daughter off advantageously. The young Rose, Marjorie, is rumored to catch the eye of all the southern lords. Is her father truly set on forging an alliance with House Baratheon through Renly? Or does he still toy with the idea that Marjorie could become queen by wedding Robert or even Joffrey?" "Ah," Baelish said, a glimmer of amusement flitting over his features. "The Tyrells want the most advantageous match. They tried to whisper in King Robert's ear that Marjorie resembled Lyanna Stark, hoping to spark his interest. But Robert is far too old and battered to be enthralled by illusions of a lost love, especially one that time has likely turned into an impossible ideal. Renly, on the other hand, well, Lord Renly is ambitious and more charming than his brother Stannis, if you'll pardon my honesty. And Mace Tyrell is no fool. He sees that if Renly ever aspires to be king, Margaery at his side might unite most of the Reach behind him. Cersei took another sip of her wine, letting her mind race. Margaery has been used as a chess piece more than once. But perhaps there is another marriage that might secure the Tyrell loyalty. The Tyrells may be the wealthiest after the Lannisters, but their ambition is rarely satisfied by gold alone. They want influence, legacy, the bloodline entwined with the Iron Throne itself. Very true, Baelish remarked softly. Are you considering offering them something else? She finally turned and fixed him with her emerald gaze. I have an alternative proposition. Instead of Margaery for Renly, Margaery might wed Joffrey in time. As for Renly, well, House Lannister has an eligible daughter who is still young enough to wed, but old enough to hold real power. And I speak of myself. Baelish's brow arched slightly. You would set aside King Robert? The realm might find it shocking. But the logic is inescapable. Robert remains your husband by law. Are you so certain you can shift this arrangement with minimal scandal? Cersei's lips parted in a quiet laugh which did not reach her eyes. Robert grows weaker by the day. His hunts, his whoring, his drinking, they will catch up to him soon enough if they have not already. The realm must be prepared for a future without him. And I need a strong ally. Renly is young, charismatic, and if rumors are true, malleable in certain ways. If I become his wife, once Robert is out of the picture, my hold on King's Landing and the crown would be far more secure than if I simply remain the widow of a dead king. Tywin will support me if it means House Lannister grows stronger ties with the Reach. Baelish turned the idea over in his mind like a jeweler examining a rare gemstone. There are complications, but your father's authority and gold might persuade many to accept such a shocking match. In any case, if you desire it, I will help place the seeds of possibility among the lords. I only ask that you remember my loyalty and reward it. Cersei walked to the window once more, the clangor of the city drifting up on the warm breeze. Of course. Your reward will be quite fitting, Lord Baelish. Perform well, and I will see to it that you are elevated to the next rung of power. Littlefinger inclined his head. I will leave you to your planning then. His footsteps retreated and the door whispered shut behind him. Cersei stood there, letting the swirl of dusty sunlight envelop her. Through the looking glass of her mind, she saw pieces falling into place. If she could maneuver Robert into a fatal accident, perhaps a hunting mishap or something similarly plausible, then her widowhood would be assured and the realm would look to who claimed the Baratheon name next. Stannis was older, but unloved by the small folk and too grim for the realm's liking. Renly had the advantage of popularity. And if she stood beside Renly, bringing the gold of Casterly Rock and the cunning of House Lannister into the marriage, half the realm would kneel to them without question. Then Joffrey would remain heir if they pressed his parentage carefully. Or, if she had children by Renly, that union could keep Lannister blood upon the Iron Throne in a new line. One that looked more legitimate, less sullied by rumors of incest with her brother Jaime. She closed her eyes, her mind flitting to Jaime for an instant. She had loved him, still did, but Jaime's presence in the Kingsguard and the swirling gossip about their closeness had become a threat to her. She would do what she must, even if it meant placing an ocean of distance between them. Especially if it meant forging a bond with Renly that secured her power more completely. Jaime's love could not protect her from the chaos looming beyond the horizon, from the Tyrell's ambition, from the Targaryen girl rumored to be across the narrow sea, from the North's restlessness under the Starks. No, she needed more than that. She needed political armor that no whisper of rumor could penetrate. Just then, another knock came. She opened her eyes and called for the visitor to enter. It was Pycelle, the Grand Maester, his heavy robes dragging on the stones as he shuffled in. He bowed stiffly. Your Grace, I bring news from the Stormlands. Lord Renly sends his regards from Storm's End. He requests an audience with you regarding certain negotiations. A thrill flickered in her chest. Lord Renly is coming here? Yes, Your Grace, Pycelle said, his voice measured and obsequious. He will arrive within a fortnight to discuss matters of the Crown's finances and to see that the small council is well informed of any changes to King Robert's policies. The king himself is still away on his hunt, but I suspect he will return soon. She could smell the musk of old parchment on Pycelle. The old man was nothing but a crow perched too close to her father's ear, and sometimes to the Tyrells. But she needed him for now. Thank you, Grand Maester, she said. That will be all. Pycelle bowed and left. Cersei moved back to the table. her fingers trailing over the parchment that bore Mace Tyrell's seal. The Tyrell words were growing strong. And that was exactly what their house did, year after year, making more alliances, forging more ties. But this time, Cersei would seize the advantage. It was time for the lioness to bare her claws in earnest. A week later, Renly Baratheon arrived in King's Landing. The young lord rode through the city gates in a parade of green and gold banners, followed by a retinue of knights and servants. The small folk cheered. Why would they not? Renly was handsome, approachable, and carried himself with an easy confidence that Robert never quite possessed. The weight of the throne had always pressed upon Robert, turning him sour when he was reminded of responsibilities. Renly had no such shadow. He greeted the crowd with warm smiles and showered coins on the children who raced after his horse, laughing at their high-pitched excitement. Cersei watched from a balcony as the procession wound its way to the Red Keep. The sun glittered off Renly's armor, catching the soft wave of his dark hair. He looked so very different from Robert. His face was unlined by years of regret or drunkenness, and his eyes shone with a keen intellect that Robert rarely displayed. This was a man who was young enough to adapt, cunning enough to see the advantage in forging alliances with the right people. She descended to meet him in the grand hall wearing a gown of emerald silk embroidered with golden lions. Her hair cascaded around her shoulders, pinned just enough to reveal the slender lines of her neck. When the herald announced her, the crowd in the hall parted and Renly bowed low. Behind him were various courtiers, including Ser Loras Tyrell, resplendent in his house's colors. Loras Tyrell's eyes flicked over her face as if assessing how this meeting would unfold. "Lord Renly," she greeted, inclining her head just so. "King Robert is away on a boar hunt, but we welcome you to the Red Keep." Renly smiled, a gesture warm as summer. "Thank you, your grace. I hope the king returns soon, though I am told he hunts far in the Kingswood. I bring goodwill from Storm's End to the throne." "You have traveled far," she said. "We've prepared a suite for you and your retinue. After you've rested, I would be delighted if you would join me for supper to discuss matters of state." He accepted, the spark in his eyes telling her that he was more than aware of what she truly meant by matters of state. They parted soon after, and Cersei felt the heat of possibility course through her. This arrangement, if carefully managed, could shift the axis of power in Westeros. That evening, the Red Keep's halls were lit by hundreds of torches, casting dancing shadows against walls lined with tapestries depicting past victories of House Targaryen, a history the new regime had not quite torn down. Cersei waited in a smaller dining chamber, not the grand hall, for she wanted privacy and a sense of intimacy for the conversation. When Renly arrived, he wore a doublet of green velvet with gold accents, the crowned stag of Baratheon emblazoned on his chest in shimmering thread. He bowed and offered her a courteous smile as she gestured for him to sit. The servants brought wine, roasted game, fresh bread, and bowls of fragrant stew. They left quietly, withdrawing behind the tall doors, and Cersei signaled for Ser Marin and the other guards to wait outside. They began with small talk, how the roads had been from Storm's End, the state of the harvest in the Stormlands, the new amusements at court. But soon the conversation turned. "I hear," Renly began, swirling the wine in his cup, "that the Tyrells have been especially active in forging ties to the crown. Mace Tyrell has offered Margaery to Robert, to Joffrey, to nearly everyone who might bring him a step closer to the throne." Cersei smirked. "Lord Tyrell does like to spread his seeds wide, hoping one will sprout into a royal bloom. However, Robert shows little interest and Joffrey is not yet of an age. I suspect Mace will be disappointed." She paused, leaning forward slightly. "But perhaps there is another way to unite the Reach and the Crown, one not so frequently discussed." Renly's dark brows rose in a quiet question. "Do tell." She lifted her cup and sipped, allowing a delicate pause. "I know you and your brother Stannis are far from close, and your brother Robert, while I have no wish to speak ill of the king, is not always the most prudent man. The realm may require a different sort of leadership in the future. You are popular, Lord Renly, beloved by the small folk. Many lords in the south speak highly of you. You have a talent for forging connections, bringing men together, winning hearts with your charm. I believe you could be a great leader if circumstances were to demand it. But you need allies. You need gold. You need a partner who can give you an edge in the Game of Thrones." He did not speak, merely watched her with carefully masked curiosity. But she saw his heartbeat in the slight tension at the corners of his eyes. She placed her goblet upon the table. "House Lannister has what you need, the wealth of Casterly Rock, the cunning of my father. And it has me. Should Robert pass, her tone was gentle but decisive. Stannis would be next in line by the laws of succession, but the realm might not embrace him. You, however, have a more genial face. The Tyrells adore you. The Stormlands follow you. With Lannister gold and my father's legions, you could unite half the realm before Stannis even raised a banner. Renly gazed at her, the candlelight reflecting in his eyes. The flicker of ambition was there, carefully veiled. You paint a grand portrait, my queen. But I am not next in succession. She leaned toward him, letting her voice drop low. Succession is not always determined by birth order. It is determined by who has the greatest support. And who sits upon the throne depends on who controls the capital and the alliances of the great houses. If the Tyrells back you, if the Lannisters back you, if the Stormlands accept you, then who is to say you should not be king once Robert is gone? She let the unspoken linger. Robert would not last forever, indeed might not last another year if her plans bore fruit. He studied her, fingertips brushing the rim of his cup. And your role, my queen? Where do you see yourself in this future? Cersei smiled slowly. I see myself at your side, Lord Renly. Not merely as an advisor, but as your wife, once I am free to marry again. I know it is a bold proposition, but if you consider the ramifications, you will see it might be exactly what you need and perhaps what I need as well. A hush fell between them. She watched him wrestle with the implications. Renly was no fool, and though she had heard rumors about his personal preferences, she believed he was sharp enough to realize a marriage of political convenience could benefit them both. Finally, he nodded ever so slightly. This is indeed bold. Yet I cannot deny the power in such a union. Your father would lend his influence to support a union between House Baratheon and House Lannister anew, forging ties that would reach from the Westerlands through the Crownlands and Stormlands and, with luck, into the Reach. Her pulse quickened with triumph. I will speak to my father, gauge his support. He will see the value of it. We must be discreet, of course, until certain things come to pass. She did not want to say Robert's death outright, though they both knew that was the pivot of this plan. In the meantime, let us begin to secure the Tyrell friendship. Let Mace Tyrell imagine that once I am wed to you, his daughter could be betrothed to Joffrey or Tommen, ensuring a match that is not overshadowed by the king's age or the uncertain future of the throne. Keep Mace Tyrell happy, and he will bring the power of Highgarden to your side. Then, all the Stormlands will heed your call as well. Renly raised his cup in a subtle toast. Very well, my future partner in the realm's governance. Here is to a new dawn for the Seven Kingdoms. They drank, and Cersei felt a heady mixture of relief and anticipation. This was the moment she had long awaited, the promise of forging her own destiny beyond the confines of Robert's drunken rule. Let the realm say what it would. She would carve out her path, as Tywin's daughter and the queen who would stand at the center of power. In the days that followed, she worked quickly. She enlisted Baelish to whisper in the ears of the court that Renly was the rising star, the future hope of House Baratheon. She had Varys, the master of whispers, spin rumors that Stannis was unfit to rule, that he was cold, humorless, unloved. And bit by bit, she made sure to drop subtle hints that Renly might gain the Lannisters' favor. Tywin, once he heard of this strategy, did not immediately protest. In truth, Tywin's mind had always worked in similar ways. If Robert died and Stannis took the throne, House Lannister would not hold the same sway. But if Renly were to ascend, especially with Cersei at his side, the Lannisters would maintain their firm grasp on the reins of power. Tywin gave his measured approval. Cersei felt more certain than ever that the game was turning in her favor. When Robert finally returned from his hunt, reeking of sweat and wine, bruised from a fall off his horse but thankfully not dead, she cursed the boars for being incompetent killers. Or perhaps she should curse Robert's remarkable luck for not falling on his own spear. She helped him into the castle, feigning concern, but inwardly she seethed. Renly had departed a day earlier, returning to Storm's End to make arrangements to gather supporters discreetly. She had hoped Robert might meet with a more fatal mishap out on the hunt, but it had not come to pass. Still, she told herself, all in due time. She made sure to send out subtle cues to certain lesser lords on the small council, muster men, confirm allegiances, arrange treaties. She orchestrated visits from the Tyrell envoys, hosting them in sumptuous feasts while gently nudging them toward the notion that House Baratheon's future, and thus the future of the throne, lay with Renly. Mace Tyrell, proud as he was, proved pliable under the combined charm of Renly's youth and Cersei's gold-laced promises. The Tyrells began to see the advantage. If Margaery wed Joffrey and Cersei wed Renly, the Tyrell name would be entwined with royalty in more ways than one. Days turned into weeks and the tension in King's Landing grew. Robert's health waned, though he refused to admit it. His face grew redder with each passing day, his breath shorter. Cersei watched with a detached kind of satisfaction as he barked orders at servants and grew more forgetful. He was well past his prime. A man who had once wielded a warhammer with fearsome skill could now barely climb stairs without panting. The boars had failed her, but perhaps time itself would do the job. If not, there were other ways. The chance came sooner than expected. One morning, Robert decided he would hunt again in the Kingswood despite protests from everyone that he needed rest. He drank from the moment he rose, then staggered to his horse. "I'll bring you back a fine boar's head, woman," he told Cersei, leering through bleary eyes. She pressed her lips together, feigning a smile. When he and his retinue departed, she found herself thrumming with nervous anticipation. All it would take was a slip of the spear, a misstep by the horse, or perhaps the inclusion of a wineskin laced with enough potent spirits to dull his senses. She sent her spies among his hunting party, ensuring that the drink would flow freely, that Robert's aim might waver at a critical moment. On the third night of his hunt, news arrived that Robert had been gored by a boar, gravely wounded. He was being carried back to the city on a litter. The instant she heard, she pulled on a black cloak and rushed to the courtyard, arriving just in time to see him borne through the gates. His face was ashen, drenched in sweat. Blood caked the bandages across his chest. Cersei summoned Pycelle, but she knew it would likely be in vain. The reek of infection already clung to Robert's body. He was carried to his bed, and the Grand Maester tried his best to stem the bleeding, to quell the fever, but it became clear that Robert was dying. She sat by his bedside, though he scarcely knew her. He murmured deliriously about Lyanna, about old battles, about a baby that never was. In his final hours, he realized that Ned Stark was not beside him, and he raged about old betrayals, but his fury soon faded. As dawn broke, Robert Baratheon, first of his name, King of the Undulls and the First Men, died with a sigh rattling in his throat. The courtyard bells began to toll as the castle learned the king was dead. At once, the realm's question became, who would rule? By law, Stannis was next in line. But Stannis was far away at Dragonstone, tending to his own battered pride and sense of justice. Joffrey, Robert's supposed eldest son, had a claim. Yet rumors abounded about the parentage of the royal children. And there was still Renly, who quietly made his move. Within hours of Robert's death, Renly's supporters began massing. Mace Tyrell, with his knights and bannermen, marched toward King's Landing to press Renly's claim, confident that with Lannister support, the city would open its gates. Meanwhile, Pycelle and Varys found themselves bombarded with contradictory orders. Baelish played his own game, ensuring that certain strategic gates and the city watch remained loyal to Cersei's chosen side. The small council teetered, uncertain which Baratheon brother was the rightful heir, but it was decided that the city needed a swift transition to avoid riots. Cersei took Joffrey by the arm, pulling him aside in the throne room. He looked confused, a little frightened even, for all his brash manner. "Mother, am I not the king now?" he demanded, eyes wide and uncertain. She gave him a calculating look. "Joffrey, dear, you are my son, but the lords will not all accept your claim. I will not see you torn apart by their doubts. Let me handle this. You will have a place of honor, but it is best you do not assume the throne until the realm is stable. We cannot fight a war against Stannis and the Tyrells and the rest at once. Trust me." He looked rebellious, but she gripped his shoulder. She would not let Joffrey's childish arrogance destroy her carefully laid plans. "Do as I say," she hissed, "or lose everything. For now, let Lord Renly and I guide the realm. Your time will come." That same day, as the news of Robert's death rippled through the city, Renly arrived at the gates with a contingent of loyal knights and the backing of the Tyrell forces, which had marched faster than anyone anticipated. Lords swore fealty, for they saw the banners of Highgarden, the gold of House Lannister glinting behind him in the form of Cersei's father's promises. Word spread that Renly Baratheon was to be crowned king with Cersei Lannister as his betrothed, securing a powerful coalition that the city watch would not dare oppose. It happened so quickly that Stannis' supporters in the capital had no time to muster. Within 2 days of Robert's death, Renly Baratheon was crowned in the Great September of Baelor. The High Septon performed the ceremony under the watchful eyes of courtiers and commoners alike, uncertain but too fearful or too enamored to object. Cersei, resplendent in black and gold, stood at his side, ostensibly in mourning for Robert, but making it clear that she stood with the new king. She felt a surge of triumph as Renly placed a gentle hand on hers and the crowds cheered. The bells tolled once more, not for death this time, but for the crowning of a new monarch. She saw a flash of triumph on Mace Tyrell's face as well, for now his power in the court soared. But she would manage him. She had learned from her father that any alliance must be carefully balanced. Of course, there were rumors. Whispers that Joffrey was the rightful heir or that Stannis was being cheated. Some spoke of how hasty the arrangement was, how the queen wasted no time stepping into a betrothal with Robert's younger brother. But the city guards were under the command of men loyal to Baelish and to Cersei's gold. The Tyrell soldiers thronged the streets, gently but firmly making it known that any riot would be crushed. In the Red Keep, the new King Renly established his seat, and the small council scurried to align themselves with him and Cersei. Littlefinger took over the finances, securing coin to soothe the city's unrest. Varys whispered in the shadows that Stannis' fury would soon ignite a war, but for now King's Landing belonged to Renly. 1 week after the coronation, a small, private ceremony was held in the royal sept of the Red Keep. The officiant was the same High Septon who had crowned Renly. The wedding was not the lavish affair one might have expected for a queen and a king. It came too soon after the funeral of Robert for even the pretense of a grand celebration. But the hushed opulence was still present, flickering candlelight, gold-trimmed robes for the Septons, a new crown placed upon Cersei's brow. She walked down the aisle in a gown of green and gold, colors that blended Baratheon and Lannister, the golden lion entwined with the crowned stag. Renly, dressed in Baratheon black with subtle gold thread, waited for her at the altar. His face was calm, though she could sense the tension behind his eyes. Jaime stood in the aisle wearing the white cloak of the King's Guard. Their eyes met briefly. She saw the conflict raging in him, but he said nothing. He dipped his head when she passed, the barest sign of acquiescence. Cersei's heart twisted for a moment. She had not spoken with Jaime about this arrangement in any depth. The old passion and love she felt for him still lingered, but she could not let it overshadow her ambition or House Lannister's future. She tore her eyes away and fixed them on Renly, who gave her a polite, reassuring smile. The vows were spoken. The High Septon wrapped their hands in a cloth of gold to signify their union before the Seven. When it was done, and she was announced as Queen Consort to King Renly Baratheon, the small group of attendees cheered quietly. Tywin Lannister stood by, watchful as ever, nodding in satisfaction. Mace Tyrell looked like he wanted to burst with pride, though he also likely wondered when Joffrey and Margaery might be joined. That night, Cersei and Renly retired to the royal bedchamber, more for appearances than for any genuine passion. She knew his proclivities lay elsewhere, though he was discreet. Still, they both understood the necessity of a consummation that would secure the marriage's legitimacy. When the door shut, Cersei studied him. He offered a sad, knowing smile. "I will be gentle, my queen," he said. "I know this is not what either of us expected our lives to be." She nodded. "Neither of us came to this union for love, but for power. Let us do what must be done." Though she felt a flash of sorrow for how far her life had strayed from simpler dreams, that sensation was eclipsed by the call of ambition. She let him lead her to the bed. They performed the duty required of them under the eyes of the realm, forging a bond that might produce heirs, or might not. But either way, the appearance of a legitimate union was crucial. After, she lay awake, her thoughts racing, while Renly drifted off into a restless sleep. Dawn was not far. Through the window, she watched the faint glow of the sun creeping up behind the rooftops of King's Landing. The city was quiet, still adjusting to the new regime. Soon enough, Stannis would send ravens declaring himself the rightful king, and war might come. But for now, she had gained what she most desired, power, secured by an alliance with the most popular Baratheon. She was no longer a queen who was overshadowed by her drunken husband or confined by rumors about her children. She had stepped forward, taken her fate in her own hands, and anchored it to a man who was amenable, who would rely on her cunning to hold the realm together. The next weeks brought an uneasy peace. King Renly and Queen Cersei held court. She sat upon a throne beside him, wearing a circlet of gold with a small, crowned stag set amid the Lannister lion. The courtiers bowed low, pledging their allegiance to the new monarchy. Mace Tyrell and his bannermen swarmed the city with their heraldry, reminding everyone that the Reach stood behind Renly. Ser Loras Tyrell became a prominent figure at court, championing tournaments, shining in his armor, capturing the admiration of lords and ladies alike. Cersei watched as Loras lingered often at Renly's side, and she made no comment, for she understood the bond they shared. Indeed, she found it quietly beneficial that her husband's affections were directed elsewhere, leaving her free to focus on the realm. She met frequently with Tywin, plotting how to bring other regions under their sway. The Westerlands were secure under her father's command. The Reach was loyal so long as Mace Tyrell believed he would get what he wanted in a future match for Marjorie. The Stormlands belonged to Renly, though a few lords still hesitated out of respect for Stannis's rightful claim. The Crownlands were mostly quiet, cowed by the presence of so many soldiers in the capital. The Vale was a question. Lord Arryn had died suspiciously not so long ago, and Lysa Arryn's support was tenuous. The North was bound to the Starks, who had not declared for any Baratheon yet, but they were displeased at how quickly the monarchy had shifted. War might still flare if they believed the rumors that Joffrey was no true Baratheon, but for the moment, the best approach was to keep them out of the conflict. As the moon turned, envoys came from Dragonstone carrying messages from Stannis. Cersei and Renly received the letters in the privacy of the small council chamber. The missive dripped with accusation, calling Renly a usurper and proclaiming Joffrey a bastard. Stannis demanded the Iron Throne by rights of legitimate succession, and he threatened war if Renly did not bend the knee. She could feel her husband's frustration as he read the words, his eyes flicking over each accusation. At last, he handed the parchment to Cersei. She read it calmly, then set it aside. Stannis will muster his fleet, no doubt, Renly said. He'll land near King's Landing or possibly try to flank us by seizing Storm's End. We must prepare. She laid a hand on his arm. We have the resources. My father can call bannermen from the Westerlands. The Tyrells hold the largest armies in the south. If we move swiftly, we can quell Stannis before he gathers enough support. Renly nodded, but she saw the flicker of worry in his features. Despite his confidence, he knew Stannis was a formidable commander, relentless and just. Stannis does not relent easily, he said. He will push until one of us is destroyed. Cersei's eyes gleamed. Then let us ensure it is he who is destroyed. In secret gatherings, she coordinated with Mace Tyrell and Tywin Lannister. They planned to draw Stannis into open battle somewhere on the Rose Road or near the Stormlands, where the combined might of Highgarden and Casterly Rock could crush him. In the city, she increased the watch, feeding the gold cloaks extra coin to ensure their loyalty. She authorized Baelish to improve defenses, awarding him with small lordships to maintain his cooperation. Meanwhile, Varys traveled the city at night, ears always listening for whispers of rebellion or discontent. She even summoned certain alchemists, remembering the caches of wildfire rumored to be stored beneath the city, an advantage that might prove fatal to any who laid siege to King's Landing. If worst came to worst, she would burn her enemies rather than let them claim the city. As the tension rose, Renly's popularity actually grew in the capital. He made public appearances with Cersei by his side, handing out bread to the poor, staging small tournaments to entertain the restless crowds. He laughed and smiled, always radiating the charm that Robert had lost. The people found themselves drawn to this new king, especially since King Robert had been so distant in his final years. Cersei played the part of the doting queen, wearing gowns of green and gold, sporting the Baratheon stag and the Lannister lion in harmony. The crowds cheered them, seeing an image of unity that they had not witnessed in the fractured reign of Robert. Within the Red Keep, however, subtle tensions existed. Joffrey scowled at her behind closed doors. He did not understand why he was not crowned, why the kingdom now hailed his uncle as king. She tried to soothe him, but Joffrey was at that precarious age where pride and cruelty mixed. He sneered at Renly, calling him weak. Cersei threatened to have him locked in his chambers if he did not hold his tongue. She sensed that Joffrey was her greatest liability at court, for his arrogance and ignorance could unravel her carefully spun tapestry. Still, she was determined to keep him under control. Then came the day when a raven arrived from the north. Eddard Stark, newly aware of Robert's passing and the sudden rise of Renly, sent word that the North would not accept Renly's coronation unless proper justification was provided. He demanded that Joffrey's parentage be addressed, that the laws of succession be upheld. He reminded the crown that the North would not be trifled with. Cersei read the words with a twisted smile. She recalled how Robert had named Ned Stark as Hand and how that had once threatened her secrets. But Robert was dead now, and the game had changed. She took the letter to Renly, who read it with concern. Lord Stark is an honorable man, he said. He will not bend easily. He was Robert's friend and believed in rightful succession. He may side with Stannis if we do not convince him otherwise. Cersei rested a hand on his shoulder. We will handle the Starks. If they do not bend, we will ensure they cannot threaten us. Renly shook his head. I do not relish the idea of a war on two fronts. Stannis from the east, the north from Winterfell. We must be cautious. She regarded him. A bold king cannot appear weak. We will meet with Eddard Stark or his envoy, show him that your claim is valid and supported by the realm. Perhaps we can negotiate a marriage alliance. Sansa Stark is of age. She could be betrothed to Tommen, perhaps. That might soothe Lord Stark's worries, especially if we promise him certain rights in the north. Renly nodded. Yes, that could work. We must do so quickly before the north commits its banners to a war. Let us extend an invitation to Lord Stark under the protection of a truce to come south and negotiate. Letters flew. The realm vibrated with the possibility of violence. Cersei reveled in the tension because she knew she thrived in times of chaos. She had learned from the best, Tywin Lannister. She would either consolidate her power or risk everything. But that was the only path a true player of the game would take. Stannis made his first move as they had expected. He mustered his fleet at Dragonstone and prepared to sail around the Crownlands to the southern coast. His plan, presumably, was to strike at Storm's End, claiming it as his rightful seat, and from their march on King's Landing. Renly anticipated this and dispatched men to hold Storm's End, among them some of the Tyrell Knights and a portion of the Lannister forces. Meanwhile, Renly remained in King's Landing with the majority of his strength, aware that controlling the capital was paramount. In the midst of these preparations, Ned Stark's envoy arrived, a tall man, gray at the temples, with serious eyes. He bore letters from Winterfell, stating that the North would remain neutral for the time being, waiting to see if Stannis or Renly could prove a stronger claim. The envoy politely turned down any immediate marriage proposals, stating Lord Stark would not arrange a union without meeting King Renly himself. Diplomatically, the man left the door open for future talks, but the subtext was clear: the North was watching. If war escalated, they might choose to remain independent or side with whomever they saw as rightful. Behind closed doors, Renly seethed. Without the North, we face a precarious position if Stannis somehow breaks our lines. Why do they not see reason? They did not side with Stannis before. They only honor him out of some outdated sense of law. Cersei placed a calming hand on his forearm. Patience. The North is far away. They do not feel the immediate pulse of King's Landing. Let them wait. We have enough strength to repel Stannis. And once we have done so, our victory will be recognized by all. He gave her a grateful smile. You are ever the strategist, my queen. She accepted the compliment coolly, but inside she felt the pleasure of seeing her plans unfold. For so long, she had yearned to be more than a pawn in Tywin's grand designs, more than a disrespected queen to a drunken husband. Now she had a seat at the table, and Renly was wise enough to heed her counsel. It was everything she had craved. As summer days rolled on, a flurry of tension spread across Westeros. Skirmishes flared near the Stormlands as Stannis' men tried to land. Tyrell scouts reported success in repelling small forces, but larger engagements loomed. The Lannisters marched from the west, commanded by Kevan Lannister, Tywin's brother, to reinforce the roads that led to King's Landing. Cersei oversaw supplies, ensuring the city's granaries were filled. If Stannis dared a siege, the city would not starve easily. Yet, as the maneuvers intensified, an unexpected raven arrived from Storm's End. The fortress had been beset by a strange darkness. Word spoke of shadows in the night, men dying in their sleep, whispered tales of sorcery. Cersei read the report with a skeptical eye. Sorcery, she scoffed, tossing the parchment onto a table. Such nonsense. Likely it is a rumor spread to sow fear. Renly, however, appeared troubled. I've heard that Stannis keeps a foreign priestess at his side, a woman of the Red Faith from Ass High. Melisandre, they call her. Cersei arched a brow. And you believe she conjures shadows to kill men in their beds? This is not the age of heroes. We deal in steel and coin, not illusions. He shrugged. Even illusions can sway the hearts of men if they believe in them strongly enough. She waved a hand dismissively. No matter. We will hold Storm's End. If Stannis has a demon in red, we have half the realm at our back. She did not voice her own quiet misgiving. An uneasy knot coiled in her stomach at the mention of foreign magic. But she refused to be frightened by stories. She was Cersei Lannister, queen of cunning and power. No red priestess would outwit her. In King's Landing, life continued under the new monarchy. The days glowed hot and the nights reverberated with the sweet aroma of blossoming flowers from the Tyrell gardens transplanted into the Red Keep's courtyards. Renly presided over small council meetings. Cersei ensured her father's voice was heard through letters and cunning proposals. Margaery Tyrell sometimes visited, accompanied by her ladies, to dine with the new king and queen. She possessed a quiet wit and a calm demeanor, clearly well-schooled in courtesy. She and Cersei exchanged pleasantries, aware that soon Margaery might be pledged to Joffrey in an effort to secure House Tyrell's continuing loyalty. Cersei noted that Margaery's brother, Loras, was far more engaged in the conversation when Renly spoke than Margaery was, but that was no concern as long as the arrangement held. One evening, a great feast was held to honor the Tyrell lords who had fought off a small incursion by Stannis's forces near Tarth. The hall was alive with music and the clink of golden plates. Renly sat at the high table with Cersei, Margaery, and Loras beside him while various other lords and ladies filled out the dais. The meal was boisterous, the new king toasting his loyal knights, praising their valor. Cersei played the gracious queen, smiling demurely, complimenting the achievements of the Reach. When the minstrels paused, Renly stood, raising his goblet. "My lords and ladies, let us drink to those who guard the realm from those who would seize it by fear. Let us drink to the men who stand for justice and unity, for we stand here this evening united in purpose." He glanced at Cersei. "And let us drink to our queen, whose counsel and support have strengthened the crown immeasurably." A roar of approval and applause swept the hall. Cersei dipped her head. She could almost taste the acceptance in the air. The lords were finally beginning to see her as more than the shadow of a previous reign. Now she was the queen who bolstered the new king, who might produce an heir that would continue this line. She raised her own cup and murmured to King Renly, "May his reign bring prosperity to the 7 kingdoms." Later, in the hush after the feast, when courtiers had wandered away to find amusements or their beds, Cersei lingered in the hall, letting her gaze sweep across the banners. The golden stag crowned with a circlet was displayed beside the golden lion. Only a few years ago, that stag had been Robert's, overshadowing the lion in official imagery. Now, it felt more like a partnership of equals. Footsteps approached behind her. She turned to find her father, Tywin, his expression as unreadable as ever. She dipped her head. "Father." He inclined his head in acknowledgement. "You have done well, Cersei. Robert is gone. Renly sits the throne, beholden to her house. The Tyrells are content for now. Yet you must not grow complacent. Stannis grows bolder and the north remains in question. We must consolidate swiftly." She let her shoulders relax a fraction. "I understand. I am meeting with Mace Tyrell tomorrow to finalize the betrothal of Joffrey and Margaery. That should bind the Tyrells more tightly to our cause. As for Stannis, we have the men to repel him if he tries to land near King's Landing." Tywin's eyes glinted. "You have done more than I expected when I first set this plan in motion. It was wise to move so quickly after Robert's death. The realm was shocked and we seized the moment. The future belongs to those who act." It was as close to praise as Tywin ever came. She dipped her head again, feeling a rush of satisfaction. "I learned from you, father. Opportunity knocks but once. I was ready." He laid a hand on her shoulder. "Do not fail now. Keep a close watch on your new husband. Charm is a fine tool, but it can be slippery. Maintain control even if it must be subtle. I do not wish to see the Lannister name diminished." Cersei's jaw tightened, but she nodded. She knew what he meant. Renly was popular, and if he became too independent, he might overshadow the Lannisters. She had to ensure that would never happen. "I will see to it," she promised. "He depends on me more than he realizes. We are safe." The next months proved Tywin's words prophetic. Stannis attempted multiple landings along the Blackwater Bay, each time thwarted by prepared defenses. Skirmishes erupted, and the Red Keep filled with injured knights, the halls thick with the stench of sweat and blood. Cersei visited the wounded, accompanied by Margaery Tyrell, dispensing honeyed words of comfort to those who had fought bravely. The soldiers loved her for it, calling her a kind queen. She was not unkind, merely practical. Giving comfort to dying men cost her nothing and bought her loyalty among the living. Renly began to feel the strain of command. Though he appeared confident at feasts and gatherings, she could see the stress lining his brow. He often conferred with Ser Loras in private, discussing battle plans late into the night. Cersei left them to it, knowing it might be best to preserve illusions. Meanwhile, she met frequently with Baelish and Varys, ensuring the spy network was robust, that no hidden threat festered in the city. She had a special interest in discovering any rumor about Targaryens across the sea or about the Stark boy in the north, but for now, the most pressing threat was Stannis. One night, while she prepared for bed, a guard knocked on her door. She pulled on a robe of deep green and opened it, finding Ser Meryn with a message. "An urgent raven, your grace. A matter of life and death, they say." She took the parchment, eyes flicking over the scrawled words. Stannis had managed a direct assault on Storm's End, aided by some foul trick. His men had bypassed some of the fortress's defenses with suspicious ease, and there were rumors of a shadowy assailant within the walls. The letter begged King Renly to come in force or risk losing Storm's End. If Storm's End fell, it would be a significant blow to Renly's legitimacy and the morale of his followers. She hurried to Renly's chambers. He was in discussion with Ser Loras but waved her in. She handed him the letter, watching anxiety flood his expression. If Storm's End falls, I lose my seat of power in the Stormlands, he said. My men there will lose hope. The Tyrells might begin to doubt me. Cersei placed a steadying hand on his arm. Then you must ride to Storm's End swiftly. Take a large enough force to break the siege and drive Stannis back. If you do so, your lords will see you as the rightful king who can protect his lands. Loras agreed. Yes, your grace, we should ride at once with the best knights. The Tyrell foot soldiers can follow, but speed will be our greatest ally. Renly looked to Cersei. Will you remain here to guard the capital? She nodded. I have no skill in battle, my lord. I will safeguard King's Landing, ensure your seat remains unchallenged. My father and Mace Tyrell remain here to keep the city from within. We will be prepared for any move by Stannis if he tries to assault the capital while you're away. But I believe he is fully focused on Storm's End. He took her hands in his. Pray for our success. If we reclaim Storm's End, it will be a major turning point. Stannis' men will see that he cannot win. She squeezed his hands lightly, a rare moment of genuine reassurance. Go show them that you are the true Baratheon leader. The realm will rejoice at your victory. She glanced at Loras. Keep him safe, Ser Loras. Loras bowed. I swear it. That very night, Renly departed with a contingent of knights, including many of the Tyrell cavalry. Torches flickered in the dark as they rode out of the city. Cersei stood on the battlements with her cloak wrapped around her, watching the column of lanterns snake away. Doubt clawed at her heart. Storms in the Stormlands were frequent, roads treacherous. If something befell Renly, all her plans might unravel. She forced herself to remain calm. She had to trust her preparations. If Renly triumphed, their position would be solidified. If he fell, well, she would find another path. She always did. The city braced for news. Days turned into a fortnight, each day bringing anxious ravens with updates of the march. Renly's forces approached Storm's End, clashing with Stannis' men. Early reports were hopeful. The new king had the advantage of larger cavalry, and the men of the Stormlands, who had once followed Robert, flocked to Renly's banner when he arrived, boosting his numbers. Stannis' men were outnumbered, and the fortress of Storm's End threatened to become his tomb if he did not retreat. But then came the chilling rumor that a shadow had slain key commanders within the walls, sowing confusion. At last, a final raven arrived, its message short and triumphant. Renly had broken the siege. Stannis' forces retreated, suffering heavy losses. Storm's End was secure under Renly's banner once more. The letter was penned by Ser Loras, extolling the king's valor in routing Stannis. He wrote that Stannis himself had fled by sea in the chaos, returning to Dragonstone to regroup. For now, the Stormlands belonged to the crowned stag of Renly Baratheon, the rightful king in the eyes of the realm. Cersei felt a profound wave of relief. The next day saw jubilant celebrations in King's Landing. Bells rang from the great September of Baelor, and the small folk danced in the streets. Cersei presided over the festivities, awarding gold to the poor, ensuring the city feasted on the spoils of victory. Even Joffrey, for a time, seemed impressed by his uncle's success. Meanwhile, Tywin quietly remarked that Stannis would strike again, but for the moment, they had the upper hand. When Renly returned to the city, the populace roared their approval as he rode through the gates. He carried himself like a conquering hero, and indeed he was. Many saw him as a breath of fresh air after Robert's drunken last years. Renly had proven he could fight as well as smile. He dismounted near the Red Keep, clad in gleaming armor, sweat and dust caking his brow. When Cersei descended to meet him, he took her hand, kissing it with genuine pride. The city is ours, and Storm's End stands firm, he said. She gazed into his eyes, feeling the heat of satisfaction burning there. Yes, she replied, voice low enough only he could hear, but do not forget that we still have a war to finish. Stannis may be wounded, but he is not dead. Renly nodded. We will deal with him in time. For now, the realm celebrates. Cersei accompanied him into the throne room where the cheering resumed. A long line of lords and knights offered obeisance, praising the new king. She stood tall beside him, letting the wave of adoration wash over her. This was what she had wanted: power, admiration, a sense that she truly ruled at the heart of the Seven Kingdoms. Robert was gone, her father stood behind her, and Renly was the shining figurehead of a triumphant new age. Or so she hoped. That night, a celebration was held in the royal gardens. Torches lit the manicured hedges and bowers, casting dancing silhouettes on the stone walls. Musicians played soft tunes, and the air was heavy with the fragrance of night-blooming flowers. Cersei strolled alongside Renly, the two of them taking a moment away from the throng of courtiers. I can scarcely believe how quickly everything has happened, Renly mused, gazing at the flicker of fireflies near a fountain. Robert's death, my coronation, our marriage, the victory at Storm's End. It all feels unreal. Cersei studied him, tilting her head. You wear the crown well, my king. The people love you. That is a priceless gift in a realm so often torn by strife. He exhaled, a slight crease of worry forming between his brows. I only hope I can sustain it. I've seen how quickly favor can turn. If I fail them, or if war decimates the land, they will curse my name. She moved closer, speaking softly. You will not fail. You have me and you have the Tyrells and my father. We will guide the realm, keep it prosperous. You were born for this, Renly. You have the heart of a king, kind, charming, yet strong enough to lead men into battle. Let Stannis brood on Dragonstone, raging at the night. We have the light on our side. He smiled, a touch of gratitude shining in his eyes. Thank you, Cersei. We may not have wed for love, but you have proven a loyal partner. She returned the smile in kind, though part of her reflected on the sacrifices she had made to reach this point. Her secret yearnings, her closeness to Jaime, all cast aside for this grand design. And yet, she did not regret it. She had the power she always craved. She was no longer overshadowed or ridiculed. She was queen to a king who depended on her counsel, forging an age of Lannister ascendancy. They turned back toward the garden path, rejoining the courtiers. Marjorie and Loras Tyrell were there, bright and beautiful in their finery, laughing with young nobles. Joffrey sulked near a pillar, arms crossed, but Tommen and Myrcella danced with the other children, giggling. Pycelle dozed in a corner, half-heartedly sipping wine. Baelish wove through the crowd, whispering pleasantries and collecting secrets. Varys loomed in the background, an unreadable smile on his pale lips. Tywin was absent, having retreated to his chambers to work on further plans. Cersei felt the stares of the court upon her, knowing they saw her as the regal queen, the woman who had smoothly shifted the balance of power after Robert's death. She glided among them, exchanging polite greetings, bestowing subtle compliments that made lesser lords beam with pride. She had learned from Tywin that winning men's hearts could be as essential as winning their fear. House Lannister held the coin, but coin alone did not breed loyalty. Appearances mattered. She had the cunning to maintain them. At length, the music hushed and the crowd parted to let Renly and Cersei pass, leading them to the dais where a table of refreshments awaited. Raising a goblet, Renly called for silence. My lords and ladies, join me in a toast. To Queen Cersei, without whose wisdom and perseverance this realm might have descended into chaos. She has proven her mettle, first under King Robert's rule and now beside me, guiding the crown toward unity. All eyes turned to her. She lifted her own goblet, heart thrumming with a mix of triumph and caution. I serve the realm, my king. May we enjoy peace and prosperity under your just hand. The crowd cheered, voices echoing beneath the starry sky. She drank the wine, letting the warmth fill her, letting the knowledge that she had indeed seized the power she once only dreamed of settle into her bones. Yes, there were wars yet to fight, enemies lurking beyond the horizon. Stannis, possibly the Starks, and the distant Targaryens. But for this moment, in this garden of torchlight and music, she was at the pinnacle of success. She lowered her goblet, meeting Renly's gaze. Their union was a careful dance, each of them stepping lightly around the truth of their personal lives, each acknowledging that politics had bound them more firmly than love ever could. But as king and queen, they were formidable. The lion and the stag had united once more. And this time, the lion would not be caged in a loveless, powerless existence. This time, the lion prowled beside the stag, brimming with quiet menace, ready to roar if threatened. So let the drums of war sound. Let Stannis brood on his lonely island. Let the North watch with wary eyes. Let the rumor of dragons across the narrow sea remain a distant whisper. Cersei had taken fate by the throat and held it tight, forging a new era for House Lannister, one in which she would not be overshadowed or dismissed. She drank again from her goblet, the sweet wine flowing like victory down her throat. Beneath the soft glow of torchlight, the Queen of the Seven Kingdoms smiled as she looked out over her courtiers. She imagined the chessboard of Westeros in her mind, with pieces scattered across every region, each move calculated, every alliance sealed with gold or blood or marriage. And there, at the center of it, sat a golden-haired queen who had reshaped destiny by her will alone. Let all who doubted tremble. This was her realm now, hers and King Renly's, yet mostly hers in spirit, for she understood power in a way few could. She would keep it. She would nurture it. And should anyone try to wrest it from her grasp, they would learn that the lion does not yield. Cersei rose early the next morning, the faint light of dawn casting long shadows across her bedchamber. She slipped from beneath the linens, quiet so as not to disturb Renly, who still slept soundly. The window was open just enough to admit a briny breeze from Blackwater Bay, and she breathed it in, mind turning over the events to come. Though victory had crowned them for the moment, Stannis beaten back from Storm's End, the city adoring Renly, she knew better than to let triumph lull her into complacency. There were always fissures beneath the surface, old grudges, new ambitions, alliances that might shift with the slightest provocation. And she had her own burdens to manage, from Joffrey's temper to Jaime's silent heartbreak, from her father's steady pressures to the watchful eyes of everyone who might sense a queen's vulnerability. Pulling on a light robe, she stepped into the adjacent solar, a modest room bathed in warm gold from the rising sun. Her personal maid, Bernadette, was already there, fussing with tea and warm water for Washi. Ing. Cersei lowered herself into a cushioned chair, clasped her hands in her lap, and stared across the table at a scattering of letters. The day's tasks loomed: a meeting with Mace Tyrell regarding the betrothal plans for Joffrey and Margaery, a session of the small council to discuss next steps against Stannis, an audience with a delegation from Bravos who had come, no doubt, to confirm the realm's financial stability. All of it hinged on continuing the illusion of a fully unified crown. She would reinforce that illusion with every ounce of her cunning. When Bernadette withdrew, Pycelle was admitted, stepping gingerly through the door, leaning on his staff. He bowed, his robes gathering dust at the hem. "Good morning, Your Grace," he said, voice frail. "I trust you are well after last night's festivities." "Well enough," Cersei replied. "What tidings?" "2 ravens arrived this morning. One from Riverrun, the other from Lannisport. The first offers respectful congratulations on King Renly's victory and requests we consider formalizing new trade routes. The second is from your father, Lord Tywin. He and Ser Kevin have successfully positioned their forces along the Gold Road to repel any attempt by Stannis to march overland from Storm's End, though that is unlikely now." Pycelle coughed lightly. "Lord Tywin also reminds you of the pressing matter of the Vale's neutrality." She accepted the letters, setting them aside for later reading. "Yes, the Vale? They have that young Lord Robert Arryn under the watch of Lady Lysa. We've heard little from them since she retreated behind the Ares walls. But neutrality can be as dangerous as open defiance. We can't afford another region refusing to bend the knee. I believe Lord Baelish has some manner of influence there, as he was once fostered at Riverrun and enjoyed a particular closeness with Lady Lysa. Perhaps he can persuade her to side with King Renly, or at least refrain from giving Stannis any assistance." Cersei nodded curtly, her mind already moving to the next point. "He shall." Dismissed, Pycelle. With a bow, the Grand Maester hobbled out. Cersei poured herself a cup of tea, inhaling the steam as she let her thoughts crystallize. Once she would have consulted Jaime, sharing her worries and gleaning comfort from his presence. Now that was impossible, or at least unwise. She had given herself fully to the game, and Jaime was a piece on the board that required careful positioning. She had noticed how he lingered at the edges of every feast, eyes straying toward her with that old, wounded longing. But she could not risk everything for a love that now endangered her power. She had to remain unwavering. A servant knocked softly to announce that Mace Tyrell awaited her in the Queen's drawing room. She swept up from her seat, slipped into a fresh gown of gold silk embroidered with green thread, and pinned her hair up. Moments later, she stepped into the drawing room to find Mace Tyrell pacing before a window overlooking Blackwater Bay. He turned at once, his face splitting into a hearty smile. "Your Grace," he said, bowing with theatrical flourish. "I come to finalize the details we discussed, my darling Margaery's betrothal to Prince Joffrey." Cersei inclined her head graciously. "Lord Tyrell, you are most welcome. Please be seated. We have much to plan." They took chairs near a low table set with wine and figs. Even at this early hour, Mace Tyrell seemed to carry the air of a man at a lavish feast. He wore robes of bright green, a gold chain draped across his wide chest. His ruddy cheeks glowed with satisfaction, as if he had already convinced himself all was well. Cersei understood that the Tyrell appetite for power sometimes matched the Lannister hunger for dominance. But Mace had found a method of influence that, while unsubtle, could be very effective: generosity, splendor, alliances sealed by marriage. "I have brought the contract," he said, patting a parchment on the table. "It stipulates that Margaery will wed Prince Joffrey within 6 months, once the realm is calmer. A grand ceremony, of course, and all the pomp that befits their station. My knights would be honored to serve as an additional city garrison in the meantime purely for the realm's safety, you understand, while we ensure that Stannis remains on the run. And of course, a suitable dowry for Marjorie will be provided by House Tyrell, matched by the crown's generosity to ensure her comfort. Cersei scanned the parchment. The terms were precisely what she expected. House Tyrell offering gold, grain, soldiers, and the intangible promise of southwestern loyalty in exchange for Marjorie's rise to the status of future queen consort through Joffrey. The alliance strengthened Renly's reign by tightening the Tyrell bond to House Baratheon and to her. This appears acceptable, she said, setting the parchment aside. I will speak with the king, but I see no reason he would reject it. Joffrey may protest that we wait too long for the wedding, but young men always wish things done immediately. Mace laughed, a booming sound. Indeed, indeed. And how is Prince Joffrey? I must ensure that my daughter is prepared for his temperament. Her lips thinned. He is a spirited boy. Brave, eager, proud. He will need the calming, guiding hand of a wife who understands courtly manners. She concealed her distaste, remembering Joffrey's cruel streak, the way he sometimes tormented Tommen or sneered at courtiers. Marjorie would have her work cut out for her if she meant to tame him. Still, the political advantages outweighed any personal concerns. But I suspect Marjorie is more than capable. Wonderful, Mace said, clapping his hands together. Then let us finalize everything tonight. We can announce the betrothal at the feast King Renly has called to celebrate the recapture of Storm's End. It will delight the court to see such unity. Cersei nodded. Agreed. You have my gratitude for your house's unwavering support, Lord Tyrell. We stand on the brink of a new era, and your family shall share in its glory. Mace's wide face nearly glowed with satisfaction as he rose, bowed, and left, the parchment tucked under his arm. Cersei lingered for a moment, letting the hush of the drawing room soothe her. The betrothal was a vital piece of her tapestry, ensuring the Tyrell swords remained at Renly's side. As soon as Joffrey and Marjorie wed, House Tyrell would have a deeper stake in sustaining Renly's reign. The moment the child from that union was born, they would be bound by blood and named to the Baratheon Lannister line. Perfect knot indeed. Rising, she emerged into the corridor and found Ser Meryn Trant waiting, stiff-backed. She swept past him, heading toward the council chamber where the small council meeting was about to start. On her way, she passed servants bustling around with flowers and clean rushes, preparing for the evening's celebration. The entire Red Keep radiated a sense of renewal, of optimism, save for those who had a shrewder sense of how precarious all power truly was. She entered the council chamber to find Baelish, Varys, and Grand Maester Pycelle already seated around the polished table of dark oak. The seats for the king and queen were at the head, set a little higher. Cersei took her place, smoothing her gown. Baelish flashed her a knowing smile, the corners of his mouth quirking. Varys bowed his head in a half-mock courtesy. "How fares the day, my queen?" Baelish asked, lacing his fingers. "We hear that Mace Tyrell has just left your presence. Presumably satisfied?" "Quite," she replied. "We have a betrothal contract nearly settled for Joffrey and Marjorie." Varys nodded softly, the sleeves of his robe whispering against each other. Such a union will indeed secure the Tyrell hearts, and hearts, once won, may be steered to the further purposes of the crown. Cersei allowed a light chuckle. "Well said. Let us see if it also keeps Mace Tyrell from growing too ambitious." She turned to Pycelle. "Any new letters from Dragonstone? Any word on Stannis's next move?" Pycelle cleared his throat. "We have only tidings that Stannis remains with his Red Priestess, gathering ships and men from the Narrow Sea. A good number of Stormland's lords have now flocked to Renly's side after the victory at Storm's End. It seems Stannis's forces dwindle, but the man himself is iron-willed. If he can find another wedge into the realm's defenses, he will try." Cersei nodded grimly. "We should not discount him, especially with that foreign woman at his side. I do not trust rumors of shadowy sorcery, but I also do not dismiss them outright. We must remain vigilant." Baelish stirred. "On the matter of vigilance, I have a slight concern. There has been talk in the markets and among certain lesser lords that King Renly's right to the throne remains in question. They wonder why Prince Joffrey has not been proclaimed king, and they whisper about whether the boy is truly Robert's. Old rumors, yes, but they never quite die. She cast Baelish a sharp look. And how do these rumors persist? I would think the Master of Coin might have the means to stifle such talk. He raised a delicate eyebrow. I do what I can, my queen. But the best way to snuff out rumors is to give the people a simpler narrative. Right now, we rely on many words, that Robert named Renly as heir, that Stannis is unsuited, that Joffrey is a child still in need of guidance, that the queen's marriage stands as the realm's linchpin. Some might find it suspicious that so many arguments must be made at once. Cersei inhaled slowly, containing her annoyance. In time, these rumors will fade. Once we put down Stannis for good and host the grand wedding, the realm will see stability and move on. I trust you, Lord Baelish, to expedite that process. Spread word of Renly's rightful rule and speak of Joffrey as the beloved prince who will inherit once he's ready. Her lips curved. Feel free to spend whatever coin is necessary to ensure the rumormongers are drowned by the king's good name. A flash of cunning illuminated Baelish's smile. Of course, your grace. I shall loosen the purse strings accordingly. The door opened and Ser Loras Tyrell escorted King Renly inside. Renly looked fresh, wearing a green and black doublet embroidered with the crowned stag, his hair brushed to a gleam. Loras took a place by the wall, arms folded in knightly fashion, while Renly settled into the chair beside Cersei. Apologies, Renly said, I was detained with some trifling matter of court. Let us proceed. What news? They ran through the standard updates, Stannis' rumored designs, the Vale's continued aloofness, the state of the city's finances. Baelish offered a cheerful nod that the crown's debts were at least being managed. Then, at the end of the meeting, Cersei announced the new betrothal contract and Renly nodded approvingly. Good, he said, glancing at Loras. I'm pleased Marjorie will be secured in the royal family. That, plus our strengthened position in the Stormlands, should ease the tension. For now, I want to ensure the capital remains peaceful. The small folk are already in a celebratory mood, but let us keep them fed and entertained. A happy population is less inclined to riot. After a few more logistical details, Renly dismissed the council. Varys and Pycelle departed first, followed by Baelish. Loras lingered until Renly waved him off with a reassuring gesture, leaving the king and queen alone in the chamber. Cersei watched Loras's retreating back, noting how faithfully he guarded Renly's every step. But now that they were alone, she turned to her husband. I trust the city is indeed secure, she said, leaning back in her seat. Your victory at Storm's End did wonders for morale. People are still reeling at how swiftly you broke Stannis' siege. Renly's gaze flicked to the door, as if reassuring himself no one was listening. Stannis lacks the numbers now to challenge me openly. Yet I sense that if he can find a way, some cunning plan, he will. He has always been a man of unyielding will. My father used to say, Stannis will break before he bends. His pride is granite. She gave a short nod. A kingdom so large is never truly quiet. We must accept that. But we have the Tyrells, we have the Westerlands, and if the North stays out of it, Stannis cannot triumph alone. He tapped his fingers on the table. The North. We've had no new message from Lord Stark. None, Cersei said. His envoy came, delivered a stiff courtesy, and left. My father suggests continuing to reach out, but I suspect the North stands poised to see who emerges victorious in the southern quarrel before declaring fealty. They have enough troubles on their own borders, between wildlings and rumors of strange happenings beyond the wall. Perhaps that is blessing enough. Let them keep to themselves. Renly looked unconvinced. We cannot ignore them forever. If the Starks feel insulted, they might align with Stannis out of principle. Cersei leaned closer. If that happens, the Tyrells alone can match any northern host, especially if they must cross the neck. Robb Stark is untested, only a boy by most accounts. And let us not forget, your name is the one that resonates now, not some aloof northerner. Let them brood in Winterfell if they wish. Our real threat is Stannis. Renly exhaled, then stood. He offered her a hand, which she accepted, and together they departed the small council chamber. The corridor beyond bustled with servants arranging flowers and hanging banners for the evening's celebration. Musicians already began rehearsing in antechambers, their melodies echoing faintly. Cersei and Renly walked side by side, exchanging pleasantries with a few passing lords. She felt the eyes of the courtiers upon them, measuring every gesture, every smile. It was essential they maintain the appearance of a genuine royal couple, even though they both knew love was absent. At midday, she visited Joffrey in his chamber, wanting to deliver the news of his upcoming betrothal in person. He was amusing himself by poking at a caged bird with a wooden rod. The poor creature fluttered frantically, trying to avoid the jabs. Cersei's lips tightened. "Joffrey," she said sharply, "stop that. You'll frighten the thing to death." He turned, sullen. "I'm only seeing how it reacts. It's just a pigeon." She swept into the room and pulled the rod from his hand, tossing it aside. "You will be crowned king one day. Show a shred of mercy to creatures weaker than you." He glowered but did not protest. She took a moment to calm herself. Joffrey was at that fragile age where cruelty and pride coalesced. She needed him to appear noble in front of the Tyrells, or this alliance would be fraught. "I've come to tell you that your betrothal to Margaery Tyrell will be formally announced this evening. You'll stand beside her, accept her hand, and vow to protect and cherish her. All the city will witness your courtesy and good breeding." Joffrey rolled his eyes. "She's pretty, I suppose. Everyone says she's a rose, just like her house. But what if I don't like her?" Cersei's expression hardened. "That doesn't matter. You will treat her with respect. The realm depends on alliances, and House Tyrell is crucial. If you embarrass me, if you embarrass the king, you will regret it. Is that clear?" His mouth twisted, but he nodded. She could see the sullen anger behind his eyes that need to dominate. She forced a gentler tone. "Besides, Margaery is pleasant enough. You might find you enjoy her company if you behave." "I'm not a child," he muttered, fiddling with the bars of the pigeon's cage. "I know how to behave." "Good," she said, ignoring the skepticism in her own mind. "Then prepare yourself. We'll dress you in your finest doublet for the feast. When the time comes, you'll stand in the center of the hall and give her your hand. Do you understand?" He shrugged, but she took that as acceptance. Leaning in, she kissed his brow, trying not to let his bristling temperament spoil her composure. Then she left him, feeling the tight coil of worry in her chest. Margaery Tyrell was shrewd in her own right, well trained by the politicking of her family. Hopefully, she could navigate Joffrey's moods better than most. Still, it wasn't her problem to solve so long as the match held. Cersei spent the afternoon reviewing the final details for the feast. Musicians, courses of delicacies from all corners of the realm, a grand dais for Renly, herself, and the principal lords. The crown would pay for it all, an expense that might raise eyebrows if not for the Tyrell gold supporting the coffers. Baelish had assured her that the extravagance would dazzle the city and quell any mutterings about the legitimacy of the monarchy. The people, after all, loved a spectacle, and they loved free food even more. As sunset approached, she withdrew to her chambers to prepare. Servants helped her into a flowing gown of deep emerald green, trimmed with gold filigree at the sleeves and neckline, the Baratheon stag embroidered on one side and the Lannister lion on the other. They pinned up her golden hair in an intricate style, leaving a few curls to frame her face. She examined herself in the tall mirror, satisfied that she projected regal confidence and a subtle allure. Tonight, she would remind the realm that she was more than a figurehead, that her presence fortified this new era. Night fell across King's Landing in a gradual hush of pink and orange, then twilight blue. Torches and lanterns lit the courtyard and corridors leading to the great hall, guiding the throngs of lords, ladies, and commoners of note who had been invited. Outside, the small folk gathered in the squares where tables had been erected and wine poured. Music drifted through every street. Within the Red Keep's great hall, the guests found their seats, chattering eagerly. Banners of green, gold, and black decked the walls. Servants bustled about with trays of wine and mead. Cersei arrived on Renly's arm. He wore a matching ensemble, black breeches, green tunic, a golden circlet shining in his dark hair. Loras Tyrell trailed behind, clad in the gleaming armor of the King's Guard. The Tyrell crest was present everywhere, with Margaery and her ladies in rose-colored gowns, Mace Tyrell beaming as if half the evening's glory belonged to him, which in a way it did. As they walked up the center aisle of the great hall, the crowd stood in respect. Dozens of eyes flicked between the king and queen, and Cersei felt the heat of that admiration. At the dais, they took their places. Margaery sat near them, flanked by her grandmother, Lady Olenna, an older woman with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue. Joffrey, for his part, was on Renly's other side, wearing a crisp doublet of black and gold. She watched as Margaery and Joffrey exchanged polite nods, each assessing the other. When everyone was settled, trumpets sounded and a hush fell. Renly stood, raising a hand. "My lords, my ladies, good people of King's Landing. We gather tonight to celebrate our triumph at Storm's End, a triumph that belongs not to me alone, but to all who believe in the unity of this realm. Our beloved queen stands beside me, House Tyrell has shown its unwavering loyalty, and together we shall usher in an age of peace and prosperity." Cheers erupted, echoing off the high vaulted ceiling. Renly gestured for silence once more. In the spirit of unity, I have the pleasure of announcing the betrothal of Prince Joffrey Baratheon, heir to the Iron Throne, to Margaery Tyrell, the fairest flower of Highgarden. Mace Tyrell leapt to his feet with a broad grin, clapping vigorously. Margaery S. too demurely bowing her head. Joffrey rose, and though he looked less thrilled, he managed a faint smile. A ripple of applause and excitement surged through the hall. Cersei watched from her seat, controlling her expression to convey a pleased dignity. If all went well, this public announcement would seal House Tyrell's deeper commitment. Renly beckoned for Joffrey and Margaery to come forward. They stood before him, and he placed Joffrey's hand atop Margaery's as if bestowing some sacred charge. May you both bring honor and joy to this kingdom, he intoned. Another round of applause, even louder than before. Joffrey coughed awkwardly and repeated the lines he had been told to say, promising to cherish Margaery, to protect her with all the power of his station. Margaery, for her part, delivered a graceful acceptance, praising Joffrey's lineage and bravery. The onlookers beamed, well pleased by the spectacle of young beauty joined under the crown's blessing. Toasts were raised, horns of wine clashed together, and the festivities truly began. Servants brought out course after course: roast swan, spiced honeyed ham, fresh fish from the Blackwater, sweet cakes shaped like roses, lemon cakes flecked with gold leaf. Minstrels played lively tunes, and jugglers performed near the edges of the hall. At one point, Lady Olenna Tyrell made her way to the high table, leaning on a cane, small of stature yet formidable of presence. She greeted Cersei and Renly with a courtly air that belied her sharp wit. "I am so pleased to witness the betrothal of my dear granddaughter," Olenna said. "We Tyrells value such esteemed alliances. Prince Joffrey will, of course, be a formidable husband, so I hear." Her gaze cut to Joffrey as if appraising him like a merchant appraises goods. "I shall hope for many children." Cersei answered smoothly, "We all pray the seven bless them with healthy heirs." "Lady Olenna, I look forward to seeing you often at court as we prepare for the wedding." Olenna gave a tight smile. "Indeed, your grace. I do enjoy King's Landing's amusements." She cocked her head, then took her leave, muttering something to her ladies. Cersei watched her go, acknowledging the flash of intelligence behind those old eyes. Olenna was no fool, and if Mace Tyrell could be manipulated with ease, the Queen of Thorns would require more subtlety. As the evening wore on, the atmosphere grew relaxed and boisterous. Lords crowded around Renly, praising his victory, seeking favors, laughing at his charming banter. Cersei drifted among them, dispensing smiles and carefully chosen words. When she caught sight of Loras Tyrell standing alone, she approached him, noticing the tension in his stance. "Ser Loras," she said softly. "Are you well?" He bowed, though his eyes flicked to where Renly was laughing with a group of Stormland knights. "Well enough, your grace." She studied him. "You seem uneasy." Loras forced a smile that did not quite reach his eyes. "I'm merely watchful. The city is full of visitors these days, and not all are friends. My duty as King's Guard is to remain alert." Cersei followed his gaze to Renly, reading the subtle strain in Loras's expression. She understood too well the nature of his devotion to Renly. Indeed, she had counted on it. But that devotion might also be a source of jealousy or fear, especially when the entire realm now demanded Renly's focus. "You do your duty admirably," she said. "The king is safe indeed with you so near." She paused, then added, "You must not forget that your own house benefits from his rule. He is no stranger to your loyalty, Ser Loras, and he will not forget it." Loras blinked, then gave a curt nod. "I appreciate your words, my queen." She left him there, satisfied that his loyalty to Renly remained unshakable. That was crucial, for in a realm of swirling plots, the king needed unwavering swords close at hand. As Cersei passed the dais, she noticed Jaime standing off to one side, arms folded over his white cloak, eyes unreadable. Their gazes connected briefly. He inclined his head in a slight bow, but made no move to speak. Pain tugged at her chest for a moment, the memory of a time when they were inseparable, plotting the future together. Now he stood as her sworn protector, but also a reminder of secrets that could undo everything. She offered him a fleeting smile, hoping it conveyed both gratitude and caution. At length, Renly signaled for the final toast. He stood, lifting a golden cup. "My lords and ladies, we have feasted well, and it is time to bring this splendid evening to a close. Once again, I thank you all for your support, for your faith in me, in my queen, and in this realm's future. Let us walk hand in hand toward peace." They drank, cheers went up, and the feast gradually began to disperse. The merriment spilled out into the courtyard, where some guests danced or mingled under the stars. Cersei drifted around for a while longer, ensuring that the betrothal announcement had been received with full satisfaction. Mace Tyrell was practically floating, beaming at Joffrey every time he passed, while Marjorie maintained an elegant grace that fooled many into believing she was simply a sweet young lady. Cersei could see the steel underneath that gentle smile. Good, she thought. Joffrey may need a strong woman to curb his cruelty. Eventually, she retreated to the corridors leading to her private chambers. The night air felt heavy with the aromas of wine and torch smoke. Guards stood posted at intervals, bowing as she passed. She turned a corner and nearly ran into Peter Baelish, who appeared as if from the shadows. "Baelish," she said, startled. "Still lurking, I see." He pressed a hand to his chest, feigning hurt. "My queen, how you wound me. I prefer to say I stroll, not lurk. I was admiring the tapestries." She glanced at the wall where a tapestry of Aegon's conquest hung. "Perhaps you should admire them at a decent hour." "You looked radiant tonight," he said, ignoring her barb. "And so did the Tyrell Rose and your son. The realm delights in a grand show, no?" "Indeed. What do you want?" He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I bring tidings, but I did not wish to speak among the others. Whispers from the harbor say that ships fly no banner, yet they carry men wearing the sigil of a flaming heart. It seems Stannis has begun to send out raiding parties, possibly to test the city's defenses or smuggle in saboteurs." Cersei felt a spike of alarm. He dares land men near King's Landing? Unclear if they've truly landed or are just lurking at sea. But it may be wise to double the watch along the docks and city walls. No need to alarm the public yet, but a small precaution could prevent a big disaster. She nodded slowly. "Yes, you're right. I'll see to it." Studying him, she added, "I trust your eyes and ears will remain open?" He bowed with elaborate flourish. "Ever at your service, my queen." "Good." She watched him slip away, footsteps echoing off the stone. That was Peter Baelish's nature, always coming and going, weaving through courtly life like a spider. Yet, for all the potential danger he represented, his information was invaluable. She would not underestimate him. Reaching her chambers, she dismissed her attendants with a curt nod. Alone at last, she stripped off the gown and sank into a cushioned chair near the window, letting the cool night breeze caress her bare arms. A single candle flickered, casting long shadows. Her thoughts whirred with the revelations of the night. The betrothal was secured, the feast had gone smoothly, but Stannis' threat still loomed. And beyond Stannis lay the north, the Vale, even rumors of Targaryens across the sea. The game was never truly won, only kept in precarious balance. She recalled a lesson from her youth, taught to her by her father: power is a shadow on the wall, only as real as men believe it to be. She felt that truth keenly now. Renly wore the crown, she wore the queen's mantle, and the city cheered. But a single stroke, a rumor turned fact, a betrayal in the wrong quarter, a lost battle on the field could send it all tumbling down. The Tyrells might flee, the Lannister name might be tainted, her children imperiled. She clenched her fists, refusing to let fear rule her. She had come too far to yield to any weakness. She would uphold this monarchy with every ounce of cunning she possessed. After a long moment, she rose and slipped into a light robe. The bed beckoned, though she knew sleep would be thin and restless. She would lie awake, planning, rehearsing strategies in her mind, listing the potential threats. In time, though, exhaustion would overtake her as it did every night, sealing her into the heavy darkness of dreams. Perhaps, if she were lucky, no nightmares would plague her tonight. Perhaps she would dream of a future in which the realm was at peace, her family safe and unchallenged. A fantasy, maybe, but one she was determined to forge into reality. She slid beneath the sheets, the candle's flame guttering out in a soft wisp of smoke. Closing her eyes, she let her breathing slow, let her mind wander through corridors of possibility. The next day would bring new battles, new intrigues, new bargains. And she would meet them all as she always had. Queen, lioness, mother, and cunning player in the greatest game the world had ever known. When the sun rose, it bathed King's Landing in the milky glow of morning, highlighting the city's towers and spires in hazy gold. News of the betrothal spread quickly through the streets and alleyways, accompanied by rumors about the lavish feast. Cersei's first meeting was with the City Watch's captain to discreetly heighten security near the docks. She gave him a terse warning about Stannis' possible raids. Any strange ships arriving at odd hours must be boarded and questioned, any suspicious cargo seized. The captain saluted, his weathered face betraying a flicker of anxiety, but he followed her orders without question. Gold cloaks thrived on gold above all else, and House Lannister had plenty. She moved on to the royal sept, where Marjorie Tyrell waited with a small entourage of ladies, all whispering behind their hands in excitement. They would pray together, offering thanks for the new betrothal. As the queen swept through the sept doors, Marjorie curtsied low, radiating a blend of deference and pride. Cersei kept her chin high, acknowledging the gesture. Around them, the Sept's vaulted ceiling soared and statues of the Seven stood in silent vigil. "Your Grace," Margaery said softly, eyes shining with carefully measured delight. "Thank you for sparing the time to pray with me." Cersei nodded, motioning for the Septas to give them privacy. They moved aside and the two women stood before the statue of the mother. Light streamed through colored glass, painting bright patterns on the tiled floor. "We have reason to thank the gods," Cersei replied. "The realm stands united against our enemies, and soon you will be betrothed to my eldest son. Our families grow closer each day." Margaery pressed her hands together, looking for all the world like a dutiful daughter. "I am honored by this match. My father is overjoyed, of course, but so am I. I've heard tales of Prince Joffrey's bravery, how he led archers during the unrest last year." Cersei paused, remembering how Joffrey's so-called bravery often took the form of cruelty to those who defied him. But she only said, "He is still young, but he has courage aplenty. You will find him strong-willed, and he admires beauty. Behave with grace and intelligence, and you shall have an amicable marriage." Margaery lowered her gaze demurely. "I will do my utmost to please him." Something in the girl's tone suggested that she knew exactly how to manage a difficult husband. Cersei felt a touch of relief. Margaery was neither naive nor timid. "Good. The realm has need of a peaceful transition when Renly's reign eventually ends." They took a moment to bow their heads, offering silent prayers before the statue. Cersei felt a strange flicker in her chest, an emotion she rarely indulged. She prayed not out of devotion, but out of practicality. Let the Seven protect her children, let them keep the realm stable, let them shield her from the vengeance of those who would see her cast down. Briefly, her mind strayed to Tommen and Myrcella, the gentler of her offspring, and she prayed they would never face the horrors that Joffrey might invite. Then she exhaled, brushing away the momentary vulnerability. Margaery lifted her head, eyes reflecting the stained glass hues. "Shall we speak more on wedding preparations? I know my father has grand ideas." "Yes, though we must wait until the war with Stannis is more decisively won. King Renly insists that we do not tempt fate by planning a wedding during open conflict. Perhaps in 6 months if all goes well." Cersei paused, studying the younger woman. "But that does not mean you cannot begin selecting your retinue, your gowns, and other details. The city will welcome a lavish celebration once the fighting ends." Margaery smiled. "I look forward to it, Your Grace." Cersei dipped her head, signifying the conversation was at an end. Margaery and her ladies curtsied again and drifted away, their footsteps echoing lightly in the hushed September. Cersei lingered another moment, gazing up at the statues, her expression unreadable. Then she swept out into the daylight, her guards falling in step behind her. By midday, she found herself in the royal gardens, a respite from the bustle of the keep. Marble paths wound through carefully manicured hedges, while fountains murmured in the background. She was meeting Renly for a private luncheon, away from prying eyes. He greeted her under a vine-covered arbor with a gentle smile. "You look well, my queen," he said, offering a seat beside him at a small table set with fresh fruit, cheese, and wine. She arranged her skirts and Saturday busy, but well. "How do you fare, my king?" He poured wine into 2 silver cups and handed her one. "Tired, if I'm honest. Holding a throne is more work than I imagined. Yet you seem to handle it with ease." "I've been near power my entire life," she said simply, taking a sip. "I learned young that idle hands accomplish nothing." He nodded, gazing out at the roses climbing a trellis. "You once told me you yearn to shape the realm, not merely stand behind a king. Are you satisfied with your place now?" She took a moment to answer, thinking of the nights she lay awake, uncertain if a single misstep might cost her everything. "I am content for now. We both know true power is never guaranteed, but I relish the chance to steer the course of events rather than be swept away by them." He tilted his head, giving her a curious look. "We make a good team, I think, even if ours is no typical marriage. The realm sees us as a united front, and that may be our greatest asset." She agreed. "Yes. Appearances matter more than you might guess. Even the possibility that we could produce an heir cements your claim in the minds of many." Though she let the sentence trail off, uncertain if speaking of heirs would prick at the truth they both avoided. Renly's heart, she knew, belonged to Loras, or at least to his own preferences. Her body had always yearned for Jaime, but necessity bound them in a public bond, which they occasionally upheld physically for the sake of plausible rumors of children in the future. He picked at a piece of cheese, sighing. "I know. The realm expects a child eventually. If we must, we will do our duty as we did on our wedding night. A child by me and you, recognized by all, would silence talk of your previous children's parentage." She set her cup down with a careful motion. "Let us not rush that. The war is not yet over. A pregnancy in the midst of chaos might complicate matters. But soon, yes, for the sake of appearances. Her voice had gone cold and businesslike, and she could see it unsettled him slightly. But that was the truth of their arrangement, an alliance of necessity bound by mutual ambition. Clearing her throat, she changed the subject. You have not told me what steps you mean to take against Stannis now that he lurks near the sea with his flaming heart men. Renly's demeanor brightened slightly at the talk of strategy. I plan to send out swift war galleys under loyal captains, men with experience in naval skirmishes. If they can intercept Stannis' ships, we might prevent him from landing raiders. Meanwhile, the Tyrell and Lannister forces remain stationed near the Stormlands. If Stannis attempts another siege, we'll be ready. She nodded. And what are these rumors about the Red Woman's sorcery? He shrugged. I've seen no proof myself. My knights speak of shadows, illusions. I suspect it's fear and rumor feeding on each other. But I won't discount the possibility that she's using foreign tricks. We'll keep watch for infiltration. They talked further of details, which lords to appease, which watchposts to strengthen. The afternoon sun filtered through the leaves, painting dappled patterns on the table. A breeze carried the scent of roses and the faint tang of the sea. At one point, a bird landed on the edge of the table, pecking at a stray crumb. Renly watched it with a wistful expression. Sometimes, he said, I wish we could enjoy a single day without the burden of rule. Just a day of simplicity. Cersei gave a humorless half-smile. We were never fated for simplicity. You are your brother's brother, and I am my father's daughter. That legacy shapes us. He nodded slowly. True words. Another pause. I thank you, though, for standing beside me. I know you had other paths, other attachments. But you chose this one. Her gaze flicked away. I did what was necessary for my family. And you for yours. Their conversation drifted to gentler topics for a while, the tension between them settling into the unspoken acceptance that they were partners in ambition if not in love. After finishing the light meal, they parted ways with polite bows. She watched him depart, joined quickly by Loras, who had been waiting at a discreet distance beneath the arbor's shade. It was a graceful dance they performed, each playing their part, mindful of the ever-watchful court. The following weeks brought a grinding sense of routine, council meetings, correspondences with distant lords, feigned smiles at Marjorie's ladies-in-waiting. Joffrey's betrothal was discussed everywhere. Stannis' presence lingered as a threat, but no major engagement occurred. Scouts reported that the would-be king was gathering men on Dragonstone, possibly coordinating with a few sell-sail companies, but nothing immediate threatened the city. Tywin Lannister wrote from the field, urging vigilance and recounting how he had smashed a few minor raiding parties near the Stormlands. Cersei read his letters each time with relief that no disaster had struck. On one cool morning, she received an unexpected visitor in her solar, Ser Davos Seaworth, known once as the Onion Knight, a man loyal to Stannis Baratheon. He had come under a peace banner, requesting an audience. She allowed him in, curious as to his purpose. He entered hesitantly, a humble figure, calloused hands and weathered face, lacking the polished airs of courtly knights. Ser Meryn and another guard stood close, hands on hilts. Cersei regarded Davos with cool poise. You come from Dragonstone, then? Under what authority? He bowed, voice low. My queen, I bring a message from Lord Stannis Baratheon. A final attempt at diplomacy, he calls it. Her eyebrow rose. Diplomacy from Stannis? He demands the throne he claims his by right, I suppose. Davos nodded gravely, producing a sealed letter. Yes, your grace. He states that King Renly's claim is void and that Prince Joffrey is no true Baratheon. He demands the city's surrender to spare needless bloodshed. She let out a short, bitter laugh. He demands we hand him the throne? How generous. Does he offer anything in return? Only that he will show mercy to those who yield, sparing them from punishment for supporting the usurper, his words, not mine. She took the letter, broke the seal, and read it swiftly. The text dripped with righteous indignation, threatening justice for all who opposed the rightful King Stannis. Her lip curled. Mercy, is it? Stannis has never shown mercy in his life, so far as I recall. He is a man of rigid justice. Davos lowered his gaze, perhaps uncomfortable at hearing his lord insulted. He believes he follows the law, my queen. She tossed the letter onto a nearby table. Well, you may return to him with our answer, Ser Davos. King Renly sits the Iron Throne with the blessing of the realm. The city stands behind him. House Tyrell and House Lannister will not kneel to Stannis' demands. If he wishes to avoid needless bloodshed, let him bend the knee himself. We would show him more mercy than he deserves. Davos swallowed as though bracing for her wrath. Very well. I thank you for hearing me out. He hesitated. If I may speak plainly, your grace, I would rather this realm avoid war. I have seen enough death in my life. Lord Stannis is honorable in his own way, but so is King Renly in many ways. Perhaps there could be peace if it. She waved a dismissive hand. Peace can only come when Stannis ceases his foolish claim. Now go, Ser Davos, and pray your ships do not meet ours at sea. He bowed, turning to go. She called out after him, tell Stannis we do not fear his shadows. Davos paused, then left without a word. She listened to his departing footsteps, then turned to Ser Marin. Have him escorted from the city unmolested, but keep an eye on him until he's on his ship. Ser Marin saluted and departed. Cersei stood by the window looking down at the distant sprawl of the harbor. She recalled rumors that Davos was a smuggler once, but loyal to Stannis out of gratitude. If even a smuggler and man of humble birth found something to admire in Stannis, it reminded her that her foe was not without virtue. But virtue did not win wars, strategy and alliances did. She exhaled, calming her mind for the next piece of business. The realm, it seemed, was edging closer to another confrontation. She could sense it in the restless hush of the courtiers, in the tension among the city watch, in the way the Tyrell knights drilled more fiercely each morning in the yards. War lingered on the horizon, but the city still lived in the lull, for the bards played sweet tunes in the evenings and the small folk bustled about their daily tasks, half believing the conflicts would remain distant. Cersei knew better. Time pressed on, each day thick with lesser dramas. Rumors circulated that Stannis had turned to some fiery faith from across the sea, that his Red Priestess was burning statues of the Seven on Dragonstone. The faith in King's Landing was outraged, but no official decree could reach Stannis' island stronghold. Meanwhile, Margaery Tyrell became a fixture at court, distributing alms to the poor, feeding orphans, and winning hearts wherever she went. Joffrey accompanied her sometimes, looking bored or contemptuous, but she coaxed him into playing the chivalrous prince for a crowd. Slowly, word spread of Joffrey's charitable deeds, which were in truth Margaery's orchestrations. The realm devoured the story, believing in a hopeful new generation. All the while, Cersei observed from her vantage point, letting Margaery polish Joffrey's reputation. It served her ends well enough. If the boy was perceived as more benevolent than he was, the transition of power after Renly would be smoother. Eventually, the day came when scouts reported that Stannis' fleet was massing, possibly preparing to sail around the Cracklaw Point to approach King's Landing from the Blackwater Bay. The city stirred with apprehension. Renly called war councils, summoning Tywin from the Stormlands. Mace Tyrell convened his knights, stationing them in strategic strongholds around the city. The walls were fortified, the gates patrolled day and night. Blacksmiths hammered out fresh weapons. The Alchemists' Guild was quietly consulted regarding wildfire stocks. Cersei attended every meeting, her presence unwavering. She pressed for caution, for luring Stannis into a trap rather than letting him land at will. Amid these preparations, a messenger arrived from Storm's End with dire news. A small vanguard loyal to Stannis had attacked from the land side, taking advantage of a gap in the watch. Rumors abounded that the Red Priestess had again conjured some shadow that murdered 2 high-ranking Tyrell officers in their tents. The fortress still held, but panic spread among the defenders. Tywin grimly noted that fear of sorcery could break men's resolve faster than swords. The city braced for a 2-pronged assault, by land and by sea, if Stannis had truly mustered enough men. By now, the small folk quaked, remembering how Robert's rebellion had started with such tensions. Whispers circulated about seeking refuge in the countryside or even fleeing across the sea. Cersei stood firm, rallying the gold cloaks, ensuring the city's grain stores were full. If Stannis tried to besiege them, they would endure. King Renly, for his part, wore a confident mask, reassuring the populace that House Baratheon would never allow the city to fall. Joffrey paraded with Margaery, awarding bread to the poor. Many called it the Golden Rain, but behind closed doors, the dread was palpable. One night, as Cersei prepared to retire, a frantic pounding rattled her chamber door. She flung it open to find Loras Tyrell, sweat beading his brow. "Your Grace," he gasped. "The king needs you in the war room at once. It's urgent." She followed him without hesitation, ignoring her half-dressed state and throwing on a cloak along the way. He led her through torchlit corridors, every guard they passed wearing a tense expression. They reached the war room, where Renly stood with Tywin, Mace Tyrell, Baelish, and other high lords clustered around a table strewn with maps. "Cersei," Renly said, his voice grim, "we've just received word that Stannis' fleet slipped past our watchers near Massey's Hook. They're now sailing toward the mouth of the Blackwater with alarming speed. Within 2 days, They might be at our doorstep. Tywin's face was like carved stone. Our scouts must have been compromised or mistaken. In any event, we must prepare for a naval assault. We have a decent number of war galleys, but Stannis is no fool at sea. Mace Tyrell's ruddy face glistened with sweat. We can send our men to block the road from the bay to Storm's End. But if Stannis comes straight for King's Landing, we're forced to fight in the waters of Blackwater Bay. That's no place for cavalry. Baelish cleared his throat. If I may suggest, we could line the mouth of the Blackwater rush with wildfire. Wait until Stannis' ships are deep in the bay, then ignite them. A risky plan, but it might destroy the bulk of his force before they land. All eyes flicked to Cersei. Renly exhaled, running a hand through his hair. Wildfire is dangerous. We risk burning half our own city if the flames spread. She spoke, her tone steely. Then we ensure it does not spread. The Alchemists Guild can place caches strategically in the water, not the city. We can time our attack. The city must be saved at all costs. Tywin nodded slowly. It may be our best chance. Stannis' men are skilled mariners. We can't outfight them easily on the water, but we can outwit them with the right trap. Renly squared his shoulders. Do it, then. Prepare the wildfire. In the meantime, gather every vessel we have to guard the bay. We'll coordinate signals so we know exactly when to detonate. The group huddled closer, discussing logistics late into the night. Which towers would relay signals, how the gold cloaks would be stationed, how to protect the city from potential sabotage. Cersei contributed heavily, drawing on the knowledge she had gleaned from her father and from rummaging through the old histories in the Red Keep's library. She recalled how Tyrion, her brother now gone in this retelling, once mentioned the potency of wildfire, though in this version of events that knowledge was gleaned from the alchemists themselves. By the time the council adjourned, the sky had begun to lighten with the first hints of dawn. Exhausted, they scattered to their tasks. Cersei found a moment alone with Tywin near the corridor outside the war room. He looked her over appraisingly, fatherly pride mingling with stern expectation. You handle these matters like a true Lannister, he said. Keep the resolve and we may yet rid ourselves of Stannis. Remember, no half measures. The wildfire plan must be absolute. If we are too timid, we gain nothing. She met his gaze firmly. I understand. We will burn Stannis' fleet to cinders. He nodded, then strode away, already calling for his men. Cersei pressed a hand to her forehead, feeling the weight of what was coming. Fire and blood, perhaps, to secure the throne once again. She had no love for the chaos of battle, but if it was required to maintain their hold, so be it. Better to do it decisively than to risk a prolonged siege that would starve the city. In the hours that followed, the Red Keep became a hive of frantic activity. Master pyromancers scurried about with carefully warded jars of wildfire, placing them on barges that would be towed out into the bay under the cover of darkness. Engineers rigged a massive chain across the mouth of the harbor, another cunning measure to trap Stannis' ships. Soldiers patrolled every street, watchful for sabotage or infiltration. Joffrey bragged that he would command a battalion of archers along the battlements, while Marjorie sat with him, gently coaxing him to remain calm and lead by example. Cersei oversaw the final preparations from atop the walls, accompanied by Renly. They looked down at the bustling harbor where green-robed alchemists were loading barrels onto small skiffs. The day was hot, the air thick with the smell of salt and tar. Far out in the glimmering waters of Blackwater Bay, the silhouette of Stannis' approaching fleet might appear at any moment. They'll be here by tomorrow or the day after, Renly said, shading his eyes as he peered out. Are we truly ready? She steeled herself. As ready as we can be. We have the plan. We must trust it. Unless you think to meet Stannis in open battle at sea, which would be folly. He shook his head. No. I'll not throw away the lives of good men in a hopeless naval engagement. Let him sail into our trap. She recalled the potential cost of wildfire. A single miscalculation and the flames might leap the water's boundaries and set the docks ablaze. Or, if the wind blew ill, the entire city could go up in green flame. She swallowed, pushing down the fear. Let us pray the seven favor us, she said quietly, though her faith in the gods was thin at best. Renly lifted his chin, wearing the bearing of a king. They will, or we'll force them to. He turned, heading down the steps to address the men mustering in the yard, offering them words of encouragement. She stayed for a moment longer, the wind tugging at her hair. So much depended on this confrontation. If Stannis were defeated, their hold might become unshakable. If they failed, the city might burn and all her works with it. A day later, watchers from the tops of the city's towers spotted the first dark sails on the horizon. Stannis was coming in a fleet as large as rumored, the line of ships stretching far into the distance. Panic rippled through the city. The gates were bolted, the walls lined with archers. Drums began to beat, summoning soldiers to their posts. In the castle yard, Renly sat astride a fine warhorse, clad in black and green armor, the golden stag crowned on his helm. Loras Tyrell wore matching armor, though with the Tyrell rose on his cloak. They would not ride out to meet ships, of course, but their presence soothed the men. Cersei stood on the ramparts, flanked by her personal guard. She gazed down at the bay, waiting for the signal. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, scorching the ramparts. At last, horns sounded from the harbor mouth. Stannis' fleet had advanced into the bay, their sails near enough to see the sigils, flaming hearts of the Red God, interspersed with some older Baratheon banners. Trapped by the chain that had been raised behind them, many of the ships drifted uncertainly, their captains realizing too late that they were locked in. Cersei gripped the cold stone of the parapet. The wildfire-laden barges lurked among the anchored vessels like unassuming fishing craft, disguised well enough until a single flaming arrow from the city's walls streaked toward one of them. A heartbeat passed, then another, and then a soundless explosion of emerald flame lit the water. It devoured the barge, then leapt to the nearest of Stannis' ships, running across the waves in a chain reaction of green fury. A roar of panic rose from the men aboard those ships. Some tried to lower boats, others jumped overboard into the burning water. The inferno spread at terrifying speed, turning the bay into an otherworldly sea of green fire. Thick smoke billowed, carrying the stench of burning flesh. On the walls, the watchers gasped in horror and awe. Cersei felt her heart hammering. She hated the smell of it, hated the screams, yet she forced herself to remain steady. The plan was working. Ships that avoided the initial blaze found themselves trapped by the chain, colliding in chaos. Arrows rained down from the battlements, adding to the carnage. It was a slaughter. Stannis' men on the remaining ships tried to regroup, but the inferno pressed them inward, the chain blocked their retreat, and the castle's defenses hammered them from all sides. Some of the fleet's smaller vessels attempted to dash for shore, hoping to land men who might storm the gates. But Tyrell archers and Lannister crossbowmen were waiting, cutting them down as soon as they touched the sand. The city's war galleys circled outside the bay, picking off stragglers. From her vantage point, Cersei could see only pockets of men who made it onto the muddy banks, rushing up the beach with desperate courage, only to be met by cavalry or pikemen. The clang of steel and the cries of dying men carried on the wind. She forced herself to watch, reminding herself it was necessary. If Stannis was not crushed here, the city's future would remain under threat. Better one brutal hour of slaughter than weeks of siege or open warfare. Renly, from the courtyard, dispatched reinforcements to the beach. Loras Tyrell led them in a swift charge, scattering what remained of Stannis' landing parties. Smoke choked the air, flames crackled, men screamed for mercy. Bit by bit, the assault collapsed. Stannis himself was nowhere to be seen, likely on a flagship or coordinating from a distance. Reports began trickling in that a few larger ships turned tail and fled back out to sea before the chain was fully raised. That might mean Stannis had escaped, but his assault was in ruins, his fleet devastated. Thousands of men died in the bay or on the shore. The sun dipped low, casting a hellish glow over the blackened waters, still dotted with patches of eerie green flame. The city watch combed the beaches for survivors, some taken prisoner, others mercifully put to the sword if they resisted. Cersei finally descended from the walls, her legs trembling with a mixture of exhaustion and adrenaline. She reached the courtyard where Renly dismounted, breastplate spattered with blood. He tore off his helm, panting, eyes wild with the rush of victory. "It's done," he said. "Stannis' attack is broken. We've won." Around them, knights cheered. Horns blasted triumphant notes. The small folk who had cowered in their homes now dared to emerge, hearing news of the victory. In the distance, the towers of the Red Keep still stood proud, untouched by the flames. Cersei exhaled a ragged breath, gazing at the scorched horizon. Greenish plumes of smoke coiled skyward like serpents. It was a victory, yes, but a monstrous one, paid for in rivers of blood and charred corpses. Still, she felt relief flood her. The city was safe. Their hold on the throne was stronger than ever. Renly stepped to her side, lowering his voice. "We must remain vigilant. If Stannis lives, he might regroup. But for now, we have our triumph." She nodded, her throat dry. "Yes. Let the realm see that your kingship will not be overthrown. Spread the tale far and wide." He handed his helm to a squire. Soldiers around them roared, "Long live King Renly." Mace Tyrell came galloping in, face streaked with soot, and practically tackled Renly in a hearty embrace, shouting his praises. Joffrey appeared moments later, eyes alight with glee at the carnage he'd witnessed from the ramparts, proclaiming the power of House Baratheon. Margaery found him and carefully guided his excitement toward dignity rather than gloating. Tywin, standing a short distance away, locked eyes with Cersei, giving her a solemn nod that conveyed his approval of how events had played out. She let the moment wash over her, the victory cheers, the breathless relief. They had turned back Stannis, saved the city from his righteous wrath. And in doing so, they had secured for Renly, and thus for her, an unassailable claim. The small folk, stunned by the horror of wildfire, would see it as the king's unstoppable might. Lords who had wavered on the sidelines would rush to align with the triumphant side. House Tyrell and House Lannister both reigned in King's Landing, forging a near-invincible power base. Cersei looked up at the smoke-stained sky, reminding herself that her father's words rang true. When you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die. Today, they had won, at least for now. Another threat might loom tomorrow or the next day, but she would face it as she always did, head held high, cunning at the ready, her family name and her iron will forging the path ahead. In the following days, the city witnessed the aftermath. The bay was littered with charred hulks of ships, drifting ashore in pieces. Crews worked feverishly to clear the waterways, piling scorched timbers, bloated corpses, and twisted metal onto barges for disposal. The stench was appalling, but gradually the blackened waters regained some semblance of normalcy. King Renly convened a grand ceremony to honor the fallen loyalists, praising their bravery. Public prayers were held in the Great September for the souls lost. The small folk were told that Stannis had brought the fury upon himself by defying the true king. Many of Stannis's surviving men were either captured or had fled. Some were taken into custody and made to swear fealty to Renly. Others refused and were executed or vanished into the countryside. No sign of Stannis himself emerged, fueling speculation that he had died in the flames or retreated to Dragonstone. The Red Priestess, that Melisandre, was rumored to have vanished as well, leaving only the faintest whispers of shadow magic behind. In the wake of this victory, fresh waves of courtiers flocked to King's Landing, eager to bend the knee and secure favor. The crown's strength was at its zenith, with Stannis' threat neutralized, if not permanently, then at least for the foreseeable future. Cersei turned her eyes to the next step, solidifying alliances, ensuring Joffrey's upcoming marriage to Margaery, and watching for any new signs of dissent. She hosted a lavish feast in the Great Hall, smaller than the one that had celebrated Joffrey's betrothal, but enough to display the realm's renewed confidence. Lords and ladies gossiped freely about Renly's cunning victory, the unstoppable blaze on the water. The name Aegon's Hellfire was whispered among the small folk, conflating the city's defense with ancient Targaryen legends. And in the midst of it all, Cersei presided with cool grace, the figure of the triumphant queen. Renly might wear the crown, but she was the one who had seen wildfire placed, the one who had insisted they show no mercy. Her father's daughter indeed. When the final guests departed the hall and the torches guttered low, she found a moment's solitude in the echoing space. The banners overhead fluttered in a faint draft. She closed her eyes, hearing the phantom roar of green flames, imagining how quickly fortunes could change. One misstep and King's Landing could have burned instead. But fortune had favored her this day. Suddenly, footsteps approached, and she opened her eyes to see Jaime striding toward her, clad in his white cloak. He bowed, a formal gesture he rarely gave her unless others watched. Here, they were mostly alone, save for a few distant guards. "Congratulations, my queen," he said, voice tinged with emotion he tried to mask. "You've delivered the realm a great victory." She studied him, her twin, once her closest confidant, now reduced to a stoic sentinel in public. In the flickering torchlight, she saw the lines of tension on his face. "We have," she corrected. "All of us together." He hesitated. "Cersei, he broke off, glancing around to ensure no one else lingered. "I wish I could speak to you as freely as I once did." She felt a pang in her chest. "I know, but we have chosen our paths. Yours is sworn to guard the king, mine is to rule beside him. That is how it must be." He inclined his head, a tightness to his jaw. "I only want what's best for you. And for the children." "I know," she said softly. "And that's why you remained in the King's Guard. Our secrets must be guarded more carefully than ever. Look at what we've done here. We cannot let it unravel." He nodded, then took a step back, resuming his posture of formal distance. She watched him go, the unspoken ache lingering in the air. She would not weep for what they had lost. She had chosen her path, and regrets only weakened resolve. In the weeks that followed the victory, King's Landing eased back into something resembling normalcy. The markets flourished, the roads opened, and travelers poured in with goods. The Tyrell forces remained in the city to maintain order, quietly ensuring that no further rebellion stirred. Joffrey took to patrolling the city with a retinue of knights, half to show off, half to quell any roving bandits or thieves who might exploit the chaos. Marjorie accompanied him at times, distributing alms and flashing her radiant smile. Cersei observed that the people responded well to Marjorie's kindness. Their cheers for Joffrey might be forced, but they cheered her with genuine warmth. That could prove valuable when the day came for Joffrey to ascend the throne. The victory also emboldened Renly. He spoke openly of sending emissaries to the north, inviting Eddard Stark to King's Landing for a grand council, to settle any lingering doubts about the rightful monarchy. "If Stannis is broken," he declared, "let all the lords see that I am the undisputed king and welcome them back into the fold." Some at court suggested pressing that advantage with an actual military campaign to the north, to force their fealty if they refused. Cersei advised patience. The north was vast, and a campaign there would be costly. Better to coax them, for the moment, with promises of peace. War with the north could wait unless they proved truly hostile. Still, occasional ravens from Winterfell remained cagey. Eddard Stark refused to bend the knee to Renly outright, insisting on more proof of Joffrey's legitimacy. The matter was delicate. The realm whispered that Robert had fathered no trueborn heirs, that Cersei's children were all blonde-haired Lannisters, something unnatural. But King Renly's popularity and the lethal demonstration on Blackwater Bay discouraged the North from open confrontation. Ned Stark had no desire to drag his people into another bloody war if it could be avoided. And so, a tense stalemate settled. Renly ruled from the Iron Throne, dispensing justice to petitioners in the Red Keep's throne room. Cersei stood beside him, a symbol of unity between Baratheon and Lannister. Joffrey took lessons in statecraft from Pycelle, though the old man probably offered little of true substance, and posture from Baelish, who taught the prince how to charm or intimidate at will. Marjorie grew closer to the royal family, spending afternoons with Myrcella and Tommen, who adored her kindness. Lady Olenna hovered in the background, sharp-eyed and critical, but always courteous to the throne. After a time, word reached the capital that Stannis had returned to Dragonstone, battered and humiliated, yet alive. Rumors said he blamed sorcery gone awry, that he raged at the Red Priestess for failing to foresee the wildfire. Others claimed he had exiled her, or that she left on her own volition. In any case, his attempt at the throne had been decisively repelled. No one expected him to muster another major attack anytime soon. The realm breathed easier. With that threat diminished, a new wave of confidence swept King's Landing. Building projects resumed, trade expanded, lavish entertainments were hosted at court. Even talk of the Targaryen girl across the narrow sea faded, overshadowed by more immediate concerns. When foreign merchants passed through, they reported that Daenerys Targaryen was rumored to have disappeared into the Red Waste, or starved somewhere in Essos, or perhaps vanished entirely. No dragons had been sighted, so it was deemed a rumor to be forgotten. Cersei found that her days were filled with the tasks of governance she had always craved. She issued decrees in Renly's name, shaped tax policies to favor the city's recovery, negotiated trade deals with Bravos, where the Lannisters' debts still loomed but could be managed. Tywin occasionally rode out to keep watch on the Stormlands or quell banditry, leaving her with a freer hand in the capital. She relished the power, the sense that at long last, she was not a mere ornament. She was a queen in truth. One evening, as the sun set in a blaze of orange over the rooftops, she stood on a balcony overlooking the yard. Below, knights and squires practiced swordplay by torchlight. Farther off, she could hear music drifting from some noble's feast in an inner courtyard. It seemed the city was alive again, no longer fearful of siege or sudden attack. A footstep behind her made her turn. Renly approached, a weary smile on his face. "You've been busier than ever," he said, joining her at the stone railing. "I hardly see you except at formal councils and banquets." She inclined her head. "I've been settling the city's affairs, drafting proclamations for the Watch, meeting with guild masters." A queen's work is never done. He chuckled softly. Nor a king's. I wanted to thank you, Cersei. We would not stand so strong without your counsel. She gazed at him, seeing a man who had grown into his kingship more than anyone had anticipated. He was still affable and charming, but there was a hardness to him now, forged by the rigors of ruling and the memory of slaughter on the Blackwater. We both did what needed doing. He nodded, silent a moment as he looked at the flicker of torches below. I never imagined I'd be the Baratheon on the throne. Robert overshadowed me, Stannis overshadowed me, yet here I am, and all the realm calls me King Renly. She regarded him keenly. We overcame your brother's legacies, one by embracing Robert's memory where it helped, the other by crushing Stannis's rebellion. You've earned your crown, Renly. A thoughtful smile touched his lips. Yes, with your help. He turned to face her fully. There's something I must speak to you about privately. A matter of the succession. She felt a prick of apprehension. Go on. He inhaled, gathering his words. We need an heir, a child. I know we've delayed the question, but the lords are asking quietly. If something were to happen to me, who would rule? Joffrey is a prince, yes, but he's not my son, no matter what we claim on paper. Cersei folded her arms, suddenly tense. The realm believes him your nephew, a rightful Baratheon if Robert sired him. That should suffice, but I see your point. They want a direct child from you. He dipped his head. Precisely. If we had a child, it would silence all doubt. Our lineage would be unquestioned. The Tyrells already murmur about it, and my Storm landlords too. They want to see that I can secure the future. She closed her eyes for a moment, recalling their wedding night, the mechanical way they had consummated the marriage. Another such encounter might be inevitable if they were to produce an heir. I understand. Very well. We will do what we must. He touched her arm gently. I know it's not easy, for either of us, but we must at least make the attempt more than once if necessary until you conceive. She gave a stiff nod. We are both pragmatic enough to endure it. A flicker of sadness crossed his features. I regret it's come to this, that we cannot simply follow our hearts. But duty is duty. She pulled away, stepping back from the balcony edge. Let us not dwell on it overmuch. We'll arrange a convenient time, ensure privacy, and handle it discreetly, so the court can suspect nothing else. He nodded, and they parted ways in a quiet understanding. The request weighed on her mind in the days that followed. Each time they found a suitable moment alone, they performed their conjugal duty. She endured it, letting her thoughts drift to Jaime only in the briefest flickers, then banishing him from her mind. Duty above all else, she told herself. And Renly, for his part, was gentle and considerate, though clearly his body did not yearn for hers. It was an act, a chore for both of them. In the hush afterward, they'd speak softly of governance or lie in silence until one or the other rose to leave. Weeks turned to months, and rumor quietly spread that the king and queen were striving for an heir. Courtiers watched her waistline with avid interest, hoping to see signs of pregnancy. She schooled her face in public, never revealing frustration or fear. The maesters whispered about potions to enhance fertility, though she accepted them only as a token gesture. She wondered if the gods would punish her for all her misdeeds by denying her a child. Yet ironically, she had once borne 3 children with ease. Now she needed a child more than ever, and the irony did not escape her. At last, one morning, she awoke feeling ill, a wave of nausea rolling through her. Concerned, she sent for Pycelle, who arrived with fumbling attentiveness. After a brief examination, he gave a thin, wobbly smile. Your Grace, I believe you are with child. The words fell on her ears with a curious mixture of triumph and dread. This was the next step in securing her power, yes, but also a new bond with Renly that might complicate everything. Still, she forced a smile, dismissing Pycelle to spread the news. Word reached Renly, and he appeared in her chambers soon after, breathless. It's true? He asked, quietly excited. We've done it, then? She nodded, a measured smile on her lips. Yes, so Pycelle claims. He will monitor me to be sure, but it seems so. He exhaled with relief. Praise the gods. The realm will rejoice. Now our line is secured. She rested a hand on her still flat belly. We should keep it discreet until it's confirmed. But soon we can announce it. For now, let us ensure no ill rumors taint this news. He gently touched her shoulder, an uncharacteristic gesture of warmth. Thank you, Cersei. Truly. I know this was not what you dreamed of, but it will strengthen us both. She accepted his thanks with a small nod. We do what we must. Now go, let me rest. I feel quite nauseous." Renly left, presumably to share the joyful tidings with his closest confidants. Cersei lay back on the bed, letting the swirl of conflicting feelings wash over her. A child sired by Renly, so it must be, or so the realm would believe. Another piece in the tapestry of her power. She told herself it was worth it. Even if it was not the child of her heart, it would be the child of her ambitions, guaranteeing the future she had constructed. The next weeks brought the usual flurry of excitement. Pycelle's official pronouncement came in short order, and the realm lit with celebration. Bells rang in the great September, the small folk cheered in the streets, and the royal family received a tide of gifts and well-wishes. Joffrey accepted the news with a mixture of confusion and scorn, not sure if he liked the idea of a new half-sibling who might rival his own claim. Margaery, on the other hand, beamed, calling it a blessed sign for her upcoming marriage. Tywin wrote from the field with curt congratulations, instructing his vassals to celebrate appropriately. For Cersei, the pregnancy itself posed new challenges. She had to endure the aches, the exhaustion, the changes in her body, all under the intense scrutiny of a court that measured her every step. She withdrew somewhat from public events, letting Margaery take a more prominent role in entertaining guests. Lady Olenna tried to glean details from the maids, but Cersei kept her counsel guarded. She made certain that Pycelle's every utterance about her condition matched the narrative. The child was healthy, fathered by King Renly, the future scion of House Baratheon and House Lannister by blood. When she was around 4 months along, the city hosted another grand feast, this time to honor the forging of fresh alliances with Dorne. Prince Doran Martell had sent envoys, curious to see if the new regime would treat Dorne with the respect it often lacked under Robert. Though no formal marriage arrangement was proposed yet, Renly sought to keep Dorne neutral or friendly, and Cersei recognized the wisdom in that. Stannis was no longer a pressing threat, but the realm benefited from Dorne's alliance if another conflict arose. At the feast, Cersei wore a gown of emerald that draped loosely over her budding belly. She sat beside Renly, receiving the Dornish envoys with gracious smiles. Mace Tyrell laughed heartily at a separate table, entertaining them with tall tales of the Reach's bounty. Joffrey sulked near Margaery, sipping wine as though he wished for something stronger. Myrcella and Tommen giggled at a puppet show near the dais. All seemed well, a tableau of harmony and prosperity. Yet even amid the laughter and toasts, Cersei kept her senses honed. She noted who whispered to whom, who cast glances at her midsection with envy or suspicion. She saw Baelish drifting among the tables, collecting secrets. She saw Varys perched at the edge, wearing his usual pleasant mask. She saw Lady Olenna studying her with a calculating gaze. And she felt, too, the intangible weight of the future pressing down on her. The child inside her was a living link to this new Baratheon Lannister dynasty. If that child survived to adulthood, it would secure everything. Renly raised a cup, calling for the hall's attention. "My lords and ladies, tonight, we dine in friendship with Dorne, our loyal allies. We also celebrate the bright future of this realm, as my queen carries our heir. Let us lift our cups to prosperity and peace." A roar of approval filled the air, echoed by the Dornish envoys who drained their wine. Cersei tilted her cup, letting a small sip pass her lips, mindful of how much she drank while pregnant. The warmth of the candlelight bathed the hall in a golden glow, highlighting the flush of excitement on the courtiers' faces. She managed a smile, inclining her head as the cheers swelled. Peace and prosperity, they all shouted. She prayed the gods, if they were listening, would grant them a reprieve from more war. After the feast, she excused herself early, feeling the weariness of pregnancy. Renly escorted her partway, then returned to greet more guests. In the corridor, she paused to catch her breath, the weight in her abdomen reminding her of how her body changed with each passing day. Jaime appeared around the corner, halting abruptly at the sight of her. "Cersei," he said quietly, searching her face. "You left early." She glanced away. "I'm tired. Growing a child requires rest." He stepped closer, concern lacing his voice. "Are you well? As well as can be expected." She regarded him with a guarded look, mindful that others might overhear. "It's not your concern, Jaime. You have your duty to the Kingsguard." Pain flickered across his features. "I know. I just worry." She hesitated, recalling their shared past, the children they had in secrecy. This child was not his, nor was it a product of that once impossible love. She brushed past him gently. "I appreciate your concern, but we must carry on." She did not wait for his reply. Her footsteps carried her toward her chambers, where a soft bed beckoned. As she slipped inside, a swirl of emotions threatened to overwhelm her: exhaustion, regret, resolve. She took a few steadying breaths, reminding herself that she was the queen, that every sacrifice she'd made was for power and security. The child she carried was the final anchor for her reign alongside Renly. No one could unseat her easily now. In the silence of her chamber, she draped herself in a comfortable robe and rested on a cushioned couch. A single lamp cast flickering shadows on the walls, reminding her of the wildfire that had once danced across the bay. So many had died for her to sit where she did now. So many might still die if new threats emerged. But that was the price of the game. As the months continued, the city indeed enjoyed relative calm. The chaos of war receded. Peaceful commerce thrived, the harvest was good, and the small folks' bellies were full. Summer lingered, hot and languid, though rumors began that autumn might soon arrive. Yet beneath the veneer of prosperity, Cersei remained vigilant. She knew old grudges festered, that any moment the North might stir or Stannis might reappear. But for the time, all adversaries remained curiously subdued. Her pregnancy progressed, and by the 7th month, her belly was quite pronounced. The ladies of the court cooed over her, offering her all manner of remedies for discomfort. Margaery tried to dote on her like a sister, though Cersei accepted it only with polite indifference. She preferred to keep her vulnerability to herself. At night, she often woke to the child's restless movements, her heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and dread. This child would be the living testament to her union with Renly, the child that would secure the Baratheon Lannister line in the public's eye. Finally, after a day of stifling heat and languid breezes, her pains began. She retreated to her chambers, summoning midwives and Pycelle. Word spread through the castle that the queen was in labor. The corridors outside her room filled with concerned courtiers, including Margaery, Loras, Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen. Renly paced restlessly. Even Tywin arrived in haste from the Stormlands stand. In silent expectation. All through the night, Cersei labored, stifling her cries behind clenched teeth. Sweat drenched her, her hair plastered to her forehead. The pains came and went like crashing waves. The midwives gave her bitter herbs to chew. Pycelle murmured worthless reassurances. She closed her eyes, remembering her past births, how it had felt to bring Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen into the world with only Jaime's quiet presence. Now, she endured it with an audience of expectant lords behind the door, waiting for the result. She steeled herself, letting the primal force of childbirth guide her body. Near dawn, with a final, agonizing push, a thin wail pierced the hush. The midwife quickly wrapped the newborn in soft cloth. Cersei's vision swam with exhaustion, but she summoned the strength to lift her head as they placed the child in her arms. A boy, red-faced, squirming and crying, tiny yet very much alive. She felt his warmth against her breast, the small heartbeat fluttering. Pycelle bent to examine him, nodding with relief. "A healthy son, Your Grace. Congratulations." She forced a breathless smile. A wave of fierce protectiveness and triumph coursed through her. This child, hers and Renly's in the eyes of the realm, would cement their legacy. The midwives hurried to clean her, to tend to any tears or bleeding, while Cersei held the newborn tight, ignoring the throbbing pain. The door to the birthing chamber cracked open, and Renly entered, eyes wide with awe and trepidation. He approached the bedside slowly, as if afraid to disturb the fragile moment. "Cersei," he murmured, gazing at the infant. Are you?" She nodded, tears pricking at the corners of her eyes. "We have a son," she whispered. "A prince." Renly sank to his knees beside the bed, carefully stroking the baby's cheek. "He's so small," he said, wonder in his voice. Cersei remembered that Renly had never fathered a child before. He was seeing, for the first time, the raw, miraculous reality of new life. She held the baby out for Renly to cradle, assisting him gently. The newborn squirmed, but when Renly's arms supported him, the wailing eased. An uncertain smile broke across Renly's face. "A boy," he repeated. "The gods have blessed us." Cersei closed her eyes, letting the tension of the night drain away. "Yes," she said quietly. "Now the realm will rejoice that our line is secure." Renly bent his head to kiss the baby's brow, then looked at her with an expression of genuine gratitude. "Thank you, Cersei. I know what this means for us." She managed a nod, though fatigue weighed heavily on her. "Let the heralds announce it," she murmured. "Let them proclaim the birth of Prince. We need a name." Renly glanced at her, searching for agreement. "How about Stefan, after my father?" She hesitated, recalling that Robert and Stannis' father had been Lord Stefan Baratheon. "Yes," she said finally, "Prince Stefan, a name that honors House Baratheon's heritage." Renly pressed his cheek to the baby's soft head. "Prince Stefan Baratheon," he declared softly. "May he live 100 years and unite the realm in peace." Outside the door, the hush of anticipation erupted into cheers as word spread. The queen had delivered a healthy prince. Trumpets sounded through the corridors, and servants ran to ring the bells in the great September. Joyful exclamations echoed across the Red Keep. Cersei sagged against the pillows, sweat-streaked hair clinging to her face, a dazed sense of relief washing over her. She had done it. The game had led her here, to this triumphant moment. A new prince in her arms, the perfect symbol of Baratheon Lannister power. As the days passed, visitors flocked to see the infant prince, each offering gifts and blessings. Marjorie cooed over him with genuine delight, while Joffrey eyed the baby with a mixture of curiosity and resentment. Tommen and Myrcella were thrilled to have a new baby brother, fussing over him endlessly. Tywin, upon seeing the child, nodded in stern approval, pronouncing him a strong addition to the bloodline. The city erupted in celebrations, street feasts, and processions. The realm felt renewed, as if cleansed of recent warfare by the promise of new life. Cersei, still recuperating, allowed herself a measure of satisfaction. In the quiet hours, she nursed Prince Stefan, watching his little face twitch in newborn dreams. She pictured the future. This child would grow up recognized as Renly's rightful heir, a direct link to Baratheon blood, though in truth the lines were hopelessly tangled behind closed doors. If Joffrey proved too unstable to rule well, then perhaps Stefan would one day ascend. She liked having that option. Renly visited them often, overcome with paternal pride. Though he still relied on Loras for companionship of the heart, he treated Cersei with a new respect. In a way, they were bonded by the child's existence. Whatever private yearnings might remain unfulfilled, they had forged something more potent, an unbreakable political family. In the eyes of lords and small folk alike, the golden age of Renly Baratheon and Cersei Lannister's reign seemed assured. The Tyrells were appeased, the Lannisters were entrenched, Stannis was in retreat, and a sweet new prince rested in the cradle. The North kept its distance, perhaps in cautious acceptance. Dorne eyed them from afar, not quite friend, not quite foe, but open to negotiation. It was a realm more unified than any since Robert's rebellion. Victories had been won by fire and cunning. Rumors of old grievances lingered, but none dared speak too loudly against the king and queen who had proved their might. Cersei was far too wise to imagine that troubles would never return. She knew the game was ongoing, that illusions of permanence often led to downfall. Still, for the moment, she savored the triumph. She had married Renly to gain control of the Reach, to secure her power in King's Landing, and now, with a new prince in her arms, her dynasty was stronger than ever. She had carved out the future she wanted, forging alliances through gold, steel, and cunning. And if the day came when new enemies rose, she would be ready to defend what she had built, for she was no mere consort or pawn, she was the lioness who had seized destiny itself. And so the days unfurled in relative calm. Renly ruled, Cersei guided from behind the throne, and the realm enjoyed a reprieve from the storms of war. The child Stefan grew stronger with each passing week, watched over by a devoted retinue of servants, protected by the gold cloaks, doted upon by Tommen and Myrcella. Even Joffrey, sullen at first, found himself oddly fascinated by his newborn brother occasionally standing over the cradle with a puzzled expression as though trying to comprehend the innocence he had never known. Yes, there would always be new threats on the horizon. Rivals might appear, old secrets might resurface, or the distant Targaryen might still scheme. But for now, Cersei tasted the fruits of her relentless ambition, a crown secure, a family bolstered, a city that cheered her name. She had walked the precarious edge of fate and emerged victorious. And as she cradled the tiny prince who symbolized it all, she felt the fierce pride of a queen who had defied every obstacle to shape the 7 kingdoms in her own image. So long as she breathed, no one would wrest it away. Her will was iron, her cunning unmatched, and her legacy, at last, was written in shining gold.